The Denobulan energy weapons vaporized the human soldier's armor, but left Gabriel Cox's flesh unscathed as the crackling beams seared his skin, but nothing more. The look of incredulous disbelief in the alien's bulbous eyes was priceless as Cox stalked forward, smirking, his particle carbine raising for the killing shots. Humanity was immune. It had taken a war to discover this fact. For years, the Denobulans had seemed unstoppable, their advanced weaponry annihilating human ships and colonies with impunity. The superior alien race hungered to enslave mankind. Now Gabriel, an ex-Special Forces mercenary, had a chance to turn the tables. When the shadowy Black Star organization tasked him with infiltrating a silent Denobulan research station in the Kuiper Belt, Cox didn't hesitate. He suspected a trap, but the payoff was worth it. Intel on new alien superweapons to obliterate Earth. Gabriel had to breach the station and neutralize these prototypes at all costs, or see humanity wiped out. Approaching under stealth, Cox's scans detected exotic energy signatures. The station bristled with upgraded point defenses. The Denobulans were definitely hiding something big here. Cox docked and crept aboard, particle rifle ready, nanofiber armor flexing. At first, he only found eerie silence and abandoned corridors. Then the blood-splattered bulkheads and scorched Denobulan corpses began. A fierce battle had been fought, but against who? Whatever had attacked the aliens hadn't finished the job. Proximity warnings flared across Gabriel's HUD as contacts closed in. Denobulan troopers stormed from all sides, plasma lances humming. Cox unleashed full auto particle beams, the shredding fire meeting alien energy bolts head-on. And that's when the human discovered his inexplicable immunity, as the air crackled with lethal energies that didn't even wound him. Gabriel stalked through the corridors of the Denobulan station, particle rifle leveled, eyes scanning for more foes. He had to find the source of those energy signatures. Rounding a corner, Gabriel stared down a massive blast door. He hacked the controls and it groaned open, revealing a vast laboratory bristling with equipment. 6 spindly Denobulan scientists spun to face him, shouting in alarm. They were clustered around a large, sinister-looking device. Gabriel heard one of them, an older alien he assumed was the leader, say, "Dr. Boron, the final test is imminent. We must hurry." "Don't move!" Gabriel barked, rifle aimed. "Step away from the device!" Dr. Boron glared at him with narrowed eyes. "Foolish human, you cannot stop us. With this weapon, your species will be eradicated." The scientists grabbed weapons and opened fire with sizzling energy beams, but to Gabriel's shock, the crackling bolts dissipated harmlessly against his armor. His HUD flashed a message: "Suit adapted. Denobulan weapons neutralized." Gabriel grinned savagely. The Denobulan's eyes went wide as he charged forward, particle blasts shredding their equipment. In moments, the scientists were neutralized, sprawled unconscious at his feet. Gabriel secured the lab, then examined the ominous device. It was clearly some advanced biological weapon, engineered to target humans. And with growing horror, he spotted desiccated human corpses in the lab's holding cells. These monsters had been experimenting on people. Jaw clenched, Gabriel accessed the weapon's data core, determined to steal the schematics and destroy this abomination. Black Star needed this data to develop countermeasures. As the download commenced, a shrill alarm blared. "Warning! Self-destruct sequence initiated. T-minus 10 minutes to detonation." "Shit!" Gabriel snarled. The download was only at 20%. He had to get this data and get the hell out before the entire station went supernova. Fingers flying over the keyboard, sweat beading his brow, Gabriel watched the countdown tick away as the files crawled over. This was going to be close. Gabriel's heart pounded as the data transfer raced against the ticking clock of the station's self-destruct sequence. At last, the files finished downloading. He yanked the data drive, the keys to stopping the Denobulans' genocidal plans, and sprinted for the exit. The lab's blast doors whooshed open, revealing 8 heavily armed alien soldiers led by a hulking brute with commander insignia, blocking Gabriel's escape. It was an ambush. "Surrender the data, human!" The Denobulan commander growled, glaring with bulbous eyes. He had a name patch on his armor. Zax. "You won't leave this station alive." Gabriel smirked, raising his rifle. "You boys picked the wrong merc to fuck with." He dove right as the aliens opened fire, plasma bolts and sonic pulses screaming through the air. The human commando rolled into cover, popping up to return fire. Particle beams stitched a line of destruction and dissipated harmlessly off the Denobulan's armor. Shit, they've adapted too. Zax snarled in triumph, storming forward with guns blazing. "You see? Your pitiful weapons are useless. This is the end for you." But Gabriel just laughed as he stood up, letting the aliens shoot him full on. Energy blasts crackled across his body and fizzled out, not even singing his hair. The Denobulans faltered, eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell?" one soldier muttered. Gabriel flashbanged them point blank and blew them away with precise headshots in the moment of confusion, the staccato thunder of his rifle echoing in the lab. Only Zax remained standing, ears ringing, stumbling behind an energy barrier he'd activated. The alien roared and charged with shocking speed, lashing out with a Denobulan martial arts combo faster than Gabriel could track. Reinforced knuckles cracked against his jaw, staggering him. Zax was inhumanly strong and fast. They traded a furious barrage of blows, Zax's energy shield repelling Gabriel's strikes even as the alien pummeled him. Gabriel gritted his teeth, absorbing the hits, giving ground. His Special Forces CQC training was barely keeping him alive against Zax's onslaught. He had to change tactics, fast. Lunging in, Gabriel grabbed Zax's arm and twisted with all his augmented strength, joint-locking the alien and tearing the shield generator off his gauntlet. Zax head-butted him in retaliation, a move that would have caved in a human skull. Gabriel's head rang like a bell, but he managed to slip a neural disruptor onto Zax's neck in the scuffle. The alien convulsed as electricity coursed through him, crumpling at Gabriel's feet. "Sweet dreams, asshole," Gabriel spat, stomping on the commander's head to knock him out cold. Alarms wailed, the countdown racing to 0. Gabriel sprinted through the crumbling station, dodging geysers of plasma, leaping chasms torn in the decks. He had to get to the hangar, had to get this data to Blackstar before the place went supernova. Gabriel burst into the hangar, only to skid to a halt, as a dozen Denobulan combat drones swiveled to face him, plasma cannons whirring to life. He was cut off, trapped. The drones opened fire and he was forced to take cover, the self-destruct timer blaring in his ear. He had seconds left. No choice. Do or die. The Merc's armor lit up as he engaged its onboard tactical suite, hacking the drones with lightning speed. Their guns swiveled away from him, and they started blasting each other to scrap. Gabriel vaulted over the smoking rubble and sprinted up his ship's ramp. The engines roared and he rocketed from the hangar as a mini-sun bloomed behind him, the station vanishing in the titanic fireball. "Blackstar, this is Cox," he said, opening a comlink as he fled the expanding debris field. "Mission accomplished. I have the data on the Denobulan weapon. Transmitting now." He fired off a burst transmission, sagging back in his chair in relief. They'd done it. The aliens' plan was thwarted. But this was only the beginning, Gabriel knew, as he watched the destruction of the research station bloom across his sensors. When the Denobulans discovered a human was responsible for this, all hell would break loose. The war had only just begun. Gabriel's ship hurtled through the void, Blackstar's analysis of the stolen weapon data scrolling across his displays. The revelations chilled his blood. Not only were the Denobulans developing a genocidal bioweapon, they planned to deploy it in a devastating blitz against Earth's cities. Sleeper agents were already in place, awaiting the signal to unleash Armageddon. Gabriel's jaw clenched as a new mission directive flashed on screen. Locate and neutralize Denobulan infiltrators. The dossier detailed an advanced AI targeting system he'd used to identify the alien agents. It was up to him to stop this attack. He wouldn't fail. Touching down in New York under the cover of night, Gabriel prowled the shadowed streets, the targeting system probing for Denobulan signatures. His HUD lit up, pinpointing 5 contacts, seemingly human suits, but their bio readings told another story. alien spies hiding in plain sight. He tracked them through the urban canyons to an abandoned warehouse in the meatpacking district. Keeping to the darkness, he infiltrated the derelict structure, carbine at the ready. Gabriel breached the meeting room in a crash of splintering wood, shocking the masquerading agents within. "Hands up," he barked. "You're done." Panic flashed in their eyes, then hardened to malice as they drew strange weapons. "Fool! Your discovery changes nothing," one snarled. "The attack will proceed." Sizzling blasts lit the room, but the energy splashed harmlessly across Gabriel's armor. The Denobulans recoiled in disbelief. "Impossible," one gasped. "You should be—" "Toast?" Gabriel smirked, raising his rifle. "Sorry to disappoint." He opened fire, precise shots shredding their weapons and perforating limbs. The agents crumpled, writhing in expanding pools of blood. Gabriel seized the leader, slamming him against the wall. "The attack, when?" he growled. "You're too late," the Denobulan hissed through gritted teeth. "In 72 hours, your cities will fall. Your species will burn." Gabriel knocked him out with a ruthless headbutt. His blood ran cold at the revelation. 72 hours, 15 cities. He couldn't stop a threat that widespread alone. Activating his comlink, he hailed Blackstar. "Cox here. We've got a major problem. The Denobulans have infiltrated Earth. They're going to hit over a dozen cities in 3 days with the bioweapon. I need backup now." "Understood," came the clipped reply. "We're putting together a team. Omega Squad, our top agents. They're equipped with the same adaptive tech as you. Rendezvous at the New York safe house for briefing and gear up." "Copy that," Gabriel confirmed. "I'll prep the op." He restrained the unconscious Denobulans and signaled a cleanup crew, then set off into the night. 3 days to stop an extinction-level attack with a handful of operators. Impossible odds. But that was nothing new to Gabriel Cox. As Omega Squad raced to neutralize the remaining Denobulan sleeper cells on Earth, Gabriel followed a lead to a clandestine enemy outpost hidden on Saturn's moon Titan. Donning a stolen Denobulan scientist's uniform, Gabriel slipped past the outpost's perimeter security and infiltrated the sprawling underground complex. What he found inside chilled his blood. Row after row of stasis pods stretched into the distance, each one housing a slumbering clone soldier. Cables and tubes snaked from the pods to humming machines. Gabriel's HUD estimated over 10,000 Denobulan warriors lay dormant here, an army secretly grown for one purpose: to annihilate humanity. And they'd been genetically engineered to survive the Denobulans' bioweapon. Gabriel's hands clenched. He had to destroy this place, burn this obscene hatchery before the clones could be unleashed. He hurried to a data terminal and hacked in, fingers flying over the controls. He had to access the pod's systems, figure out a way to neutralize. "Intruder detected," a cold voice rang out. "Stand down or be terminated." Gabriel spun as a hulking figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Denobulan, but larger, encased in a bristling exoskeleton that whirred with motorized servos. A name was stenciled on the armor: Karrik, head of security. "You don't belong here, human," Karrik growled, looming over Gabriel, weapons snapped from housings on the exosuit's arms. "This will be your only warning." Gabriel's rifle was in his hands in a flash. "Warning this!" He fired point blank. Particle beams sizzled against the exosuit's energy shields and dissipated harmlessly. Karrik didn't even flinch. He lunged with shocking speed, a shimmering blade sprouting from his gauntlet and slashing for Gabriel's neck. Gabriel wrenched aside, the blade hissing past his throat. He rolled and came up firing, stitching a line of craters across Karrik's shields. The Denobulan laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Pathetic! You cannot harm me!" Karrik's exoskeleton-enhanced strength was staggering. He moved like a juggernaut, smashing through equipment, shrugging off Gabriel's hits. His blows crumpled steel when they landed. Gabriel dodged and wove, his armor barely absorbing the punishing strikes. He was outmatched. Consoles shattered as Gabriel crashed into them, flung by a brutal kick. Warning glyphs flashed on his HUD. Armor integrity critical. He staggered up, firing from the hip, but Karrik walked through the barrage unscathed. "You only delay the inevitable," the giant roared. "These clones will be your species' doom." Gritting his teeth, Gabriel launched himself at Karrik, lashing out with a spinning kick. His boot hammered the exosuit dead center and bounced off like he'd struck a steel wall. Karik's answering backhand sent him flying. He hit the ground hard, vision flickering. Karrik loomed over him, raised a fist to crush his skull. Gabriel's hand slapped a control panel. Above them, the stasis pods hissed open and clone soldiers stumbled out, disoriented. Gabriel had triggered an emergency revival. "No!" Karrik bellowed. "You'll ruin everything." Gabriel grinned through bloody teeth. That's the idea. He caught Karik's descending fist and heaved, servos in his own armor whining. They crashed together, trading titanic blows. Gabriel hammered the exosuit's knee joint, buckling it. Karrik roared in fury and grabbed his neck, squeezing. Choking, Gabriel pried at the vice grip. His vision tunneled. Desperately, he groped at Karik's chest, seeking, there! He ripped away an armor plate, exposing the glowing power core. "Get off me!" Gabriel drove an armored fist into the spherical device. It cracked, energy leaking out. "No!" Karrik howled. "What have you done?" The exosuit went rigid, servos locking up. Gabriel tore free and staggered back as Karrik toppled like a felled tree, the suit's systems failing. All around them, the awakened clones milled in confusion, shouting in the Denobulan tongue. Gabriel armed the demo charges on his belt. It was time to leave. He sprinted for the exit, the world shaking as he set off the explosives behind him. Gouts of fire chased him, the cloning facility collapsing in a chain of deafening detonations. Gabriel didn't look back as he vaulted into his ship and roared into the sky, the outpost vanishing in a plume of debris. Gabriel patched into the comms, picking up chatter from Omega Squad. They had neutralized 12 of the 15 Denobulan agents, but worryingly, the last 3 cells had gone dark and vanished. "Cox here," he reported. "The clone facility on Titan is scrap. En route to the rally point now. We need to find those final agents fast." He received confirmation and angled toward Earth, mind racing. They'd struck a blow against the Denobulans today, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They still had to stop the imminent attack. Failure wasn't an option. As Gabriel made planetfall, he couldn't shake the feeling in his gut that this was all building to something even worse. The mysterious devices Omega had recovered from the sleeper agents nagged at him. The strange energy they emitted, unlike anything on record. What the hell were they for? He had a feeling they'd find out soon, and it wouldn't be good. Gabriel's blood ran cold as he examined the strange device recovered from the London sleeper cell. Olivia, Omega Squad's tech specialist, ran her scanners over it, her brow furrowed. "This is bad," she muttered. "Really bad. These components, they're part of a terraforming machine, Denobulan tech, designed to rapidly alter a planet's atmosphere." Gabriel's fist clenched. "Let me guess, to make Earth nice and cozy for Denobulans." Olivia nodded grimly. "And deadly for humans. The machine will seed the atmosphere with nanobots carrying the bioweapon. It'll transform the environment in a matter of days. We'll never survive it." "Shit," Gabriel growled. The stakes had just skyrocketed. "We need to find the other components fast, before those bastards can put this thing together." Omega Squad mobilized, racing to track down the remaining sleeper cells. Intercepted intel pointed to Tokyo and Sydney. They'd have to split up, hit both cities simultaneously. Time was running out. In Tokyo, Gabriel gunned his hoverbike through neon-drenched streets, weaving through dense traffic. His HUD flashed a warning. 6 Denobulan contacts converging on his position. These guys weren't bothering to hide anymore. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head, exploding storefronts and sending civilians screaming. Gabriel whipped out his sidearm and fired back, bike careening around a corner. The Denobulans pursued relentlessly, energy blasts peppering his bike. Gabriel skidded into a narrow alley, sparks flying. His bike scraped the walls as hostile fire stitched past him. He glanced back. The Denobulans had dismounted, sprinting after him with weapons blazing. Nowhere to go but up. Gabriel gunned the accelerator and aimed for a pile of scrap metal. His bike hit the ramp and soared, arcing high over the alley. The Denobulans gaped as he flipped over their heads, armor glinting under the neon signs. Gabriel unloaded his rifle in midair, stitching a line of precise headshots across the aliens. Their bodies crumpled before his tires even touched pavement. He screeched to a halt, breathing hard. The device was here somewhere. Had to be. He scanned the area and zeroed in on a signature, moving to a nearby building. Gabriel smashed through a window and rolled into a crouch, rifle leveled. 5 startled Denobulans spun to face him, a strange machine whirring on the table between them. Gabriel glimpsed curved metal, pulsing circuitry. The component. "Hands off, assholes!" he barked. The aliens snatched for weapons. Gabriel was faster. He burst forward, augmented muscles surging. His first shot exploded a Denobulan's head like a ripe melon. Particle beams crisscrossed the room, flaying armor, searing flesh. Gabriel danced between the blasts, rifle hammering. 2 more aliens went down, gaping holes blown through their chests. The survivors closed in, drawing humming batons. Gabriel ducked a whistling strike and palm slammed the alien's nose into his brain. Bone crackled. He spun into a reverse kick, caving in the last Denobulan's sternum. The alien folded like a rag doll, wheezing through shattered ribs. Gabriel scooped up the device, circuits still thrumming. "Omega, I've got the package, en route to the rendezvous." Olivia's voice crackled over comms. "Good timing. We just secured the component in Sydney. Had to deal with some cloaked dinos, but they weren't counting on my new scanner tech." "Nice work," Gabriel said, straddling his bike. "I'll see you at the—" A sudden transmission cut him off. An image flickered in his HUD. A face he recognized all too well. Dr. Boron, the scientist from the Kuiper Belt Station. "Gabriel Cox," the Denobulan said. He looked haggard, his bulbous eyes haunted. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need you to listen. I was wrong to be part of this. The terraforming plan, it's madness. It will destroy your people and corrupt mine. I can't let that happen." Gabriel's face hardened. "If this is some kind of trick—" "No tricks," Boron said. "I'm taking a terrible risk contacting you, but I know where they're assembling the machine. I can help you get inside, shut it down before it's too late. Meet me at these coordinates." A string of numbers blinked on Gabriel's display. The Australian outback, deep in the red desert. "I'll be there," Gabriel said. "For your sake, this better not be another trap." He revved his bike and shot into the neon-streaked night, the device secured on his back. One way or another, this ended now. The outback base was a fortress, ringed by towering walls bristling with gun emplacements. Squads of armored Denobulans patrolled the perimeter, energy rifles charged and ready. A pulsing dome of shimmering energy shielded the entire compound. Getting inside would be suicide. But that was what Gabriel did best. Omega Squad gathered at the rendezvous point, a narrow canyon a few clicks from the base. Gabriel eyed the team, 5 battle-hardened operatives armed to the teeth. They'd been through hell together, and he'd trust any of them with his life. But this was bigger than anything they'd faced. "The machine is in there somewhere," he said, pointing at the base's holographic schematic. "Dr. Boron will help us slip past the shield. Once we're inside, we split into 2 teams. Olivia, you're with me. We'll find the primary component and set the charges. The rest of you, create a diversion. Keep them busy. This is our one shot. We can't afford any mistakes. Understood?" Grim nods all around. They knew the stakes. The survival of the human race hung in the balance. Gabriel checked his rifle, armor plates clinking. No turning back now. A shimmer of light, and Dr. Boron emerged from the shadows, his face drawn and pale. He held a strange device, all gleaming curves and pulsing circuitry. "This will get you through the shield," the Denobulan said. "I've arranged for a maintenance hatch to be left open on the east side. Your suit's cloaking tech should get you past the patrols, but once you're inside, my people will show no mercy. You must act swiftly. Gabriel took the device, feeling its weight in his palm. So much rode on this fragile piece of alien tech, on trusting a Denobulan after everything they'd done. But he had no choice. "Let's move," he said, locking eyes with his team. "We end this tonight." They slipped into the desert night toward the looming walls of the compound, toward the fight of their lives. Gabriel and his team crept through the shadowed corridors of the Denobulan compound, their disguises letting them slip past patrols unnoticed. Dr. Boron's schematics guided them unerringly toward the control room housing the terraforming machine's pulsing heart. "We're close," Olivia whispered, consulting her wrist display. 200 meters. Gabriel nodded, carbine held ready. Tension coiled in his muscles, senses hyper-alert. This was it, the climax of their mission, the final chance to stop Earth's annihilation. Failure was not an option. They rounded a corner and froze. 8 Denobulan elite guards blocked the control room's blast doors, clad in bristling power armor, plasma rifles leveled. "Shit," Marcus hissed. "So much for our disguises." The guards shouted challenges, demanding authentication codes. Gabriel looked to Olivia and Marcus, a smile curving his lips. They knew what to do. As one, Omega opened fire. The corridor exploded with blistering light and sound as plasma bolts and kinetic slugs crisscrossed in a lethal web. Gabriel danced between blasts, his adaptive armor shimmering, shrugging off hits that would have vaporized any other human. His carbine barked in staccato thunder, stitching craters across Denobulan armor. Olivia and Marcus moved in perfect sync with their leader, pouring fire into the guards. Their aim was uncanny, shots punching through visors and weak points. 2 guards went down in sprays of blood and shattered composite. But the elites rallied swiftly, laying down a withering suppressive barrage. Searing plasma sizzled past Gabriel's head as he dove into cover behind a bulkhead. Olivia cried out as a bolt clipped her shoulder, armor smoking. "I'm okay," she gritted out, returning fire one-handed. "Flesh wound." Marcus triggered an airburst grenade, filling the corridor with shrieking shrapnel. Denobulan screams echoed. Gabriel seized the moment and vaulted from cover, closing the distance in a blur. He pile-drove a spinning kick into the nearest guard's chest, caving in armor like tinfoil. Bone cracked. The guard crumpled. Olivia and Marcus pushed up, carbines hammering. The momentum had shifted. The remaining elites fell back, trying to rally, but Omega Squad was relentless. Gabriel cut them down with precise headshots, dancing through their fire untouched. The last guard jerked and toppled as Marcus put a slug through his faceplate. Panting, the 3 humans regrouped before the blast doors. Olivia hacked the controls and they hissed open. "Boron should already be inside," Gabriel said. "Let's hope the old squid has disabled the—" A piercing klaxon cut him off. The compound's alarm. A cold knot formed in Gabriel's gut. Something had gone wrong. "Double time it, people," he barked. "We're out of time." They charged into the control room, a cavernous space dominated by the terraforming machine's pulsing core. Towering coils crackled with eldritch energies, the air shimmering with heat. And before the control panel, 2 figures grappled in desperate combat. Dr. Boron and a hulking Denobulan in elaborate armor, Admiral Zortex. Zortex roared as he pummeled the scientist, hate twisting his features. Dr. Boron reeled under the onslaught, his face a bloody ruin, but still he fought, clawing for the control panel. Zortex seized him by the throat, snarling. "Traitor," the Admiral bellowed. "You betray your species, your birthright. And for what? These pitiful apes?" Boron spat blood, fixing Zortex with a baleful glare. "No, I betray our arrogance, our cruelty. The humans are more than we realized. They deserve a chance." Zortex's face purpled with rage, his hands squeezed, choking the scientist. A flicker of light and an energy blade sprang to life in the Admiral's other fist, poised to strike. "Hey, asshole," Gabriel shouted. "Pick on someone your own size." Zortex whirled, shock slackening his features as he saw Gabriel charging. The Merc slammed into him at full sprint, knocking Boron free from his grasp. They hit the deck in a crash of armor, Gabriel raining blows on the Admiral's helmeted head. Zortex snarled and kicked him off, rolling to his feet. The energy blade hummed as he lunged, slashing for Gabriel's throat. Gabriel wove aside, the searing blade hissing past his neck. He countered with a spinning back kick that cracked against Zortex's ribs. The Admiral grunted, staggering back, but he was quick to recover, a master fighter. The blade scythed out in a blur, forcing Gabriel to give ground. Zortex pressed the attack, a dervish of whirling death. The blade was everywhere, keening as it sliced air. Gabriel dodged and parried with his armored gauntlets, the impacts juddering up his arms. His HUD flashed warnings as the temperature spiked near the blade. One slip and he'd be curling smoke. "My people are the future," Zortex growled as they danced their lethal duel. "The strong. You humans are a dead end, an evolutionary mistake. What right do you have to live?" "The right of every sapient species," Gabriel shot back, ducking a decapitating slash. "The right to choose." He launched a high kick, forcing Zortex to block high. At the same instant, Gabriel torqued his hips and drove an armored fist into the Admiral's stomach. Breath whooshed out of Zortex as he folded. Gabriel grabbed his sword arm and wrenched with all his might. Bone snapped. Zortex howled. The energy blade tumbled from his nerveless fingers and winked out. Roaring, the Admiral jolted his head forward, smashing his helmet against Gabriel's face. The human reeled back, stars exploding across his vision. Zortex punched him in the throat, crushing force. Gabriel choked, staggering. Zortex kicked his legs out. He hit the deck hard, gasping for breath. The Admiral loomed over him, raising his boot to crush Gabriel's skull. Through wavering vision, Gabriel saw Boron slumped against the control panel, Olivia kneeling over him. "The machine," the scientist rasped. "Overload it, quickly." Olivia typed furiously, hands flying over the keys. The terraforming machine's core pulsed faster, crackling with arcing energies. An ominous whine built in the air. Zortex glanced back at the sound, eyes widening. Gabriel seized his chance. His legs scythed out, knocking the Admiral's feet from under him. Zortex crashed down and Gabriel pounced, pinning him. He jacked an armor-sheathed punch into Zortex's face once, twice, 3 times. The Admiral's struggles weakened. "Gabe," Olivia shouted, "it's gonna blow, we have to move." Alarms shrieked as the machine's core pulsed critical. Gabriel hauled Zortex up, getting an arm around his neck. "You haven't won," the Admiral slurred, dazed. "There will be others." "Shut up," Gabriel growled. He looked to Olivia. "Help me with him. We're leaving." Together they hauled Boron to his feet, the scientist sagging between them. Zortex they dragged, the semi-conscious Admiral stumbling. They sprinted from the control room as the machine shook itself apart, the very air vibrating. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then the core detonated. A sphere of blinding light consumed the machine, rapidly expanding. Searing heat washed over them. The blast doors slammed shut, but they buckled inward like crumpling foil. Cracks split the ceiling, gouts of fire jetting through. "Go, go, go!" Gabriel roared. They pounded down the shuddering corridors, the compound coming apart around them. Ahead, the rest of Omega Squad appeared, running full tilt. Massive bay doors ground open, daylight spilling in. Beyond them, a transport skimmer waited, engines keening. "Come on!" Jacob Novak shouted over the din, beckoning them on. Denobulan soldiers lay strewn around the hangar, perforated with wounds. Black smoke billowed, the acrid stench of burning metal and plastic. Secondary explosions walked across the compound, geysers of fire gouting. Gabriel and the others stumbled into the blinding light, the earth heaving beneath them. Olivia cried out as a support beam gave way above, tons of ferrocrete plummeting down. Gabriel shoved her aside, hurling Boron clear. The rubble crashed down an arm's span from him, the impact slamming him to the ground. He rolled up, ears ringing, and staggered on. They piled into the skimmer, bullets pinging off its armored hide. Novak laid down covering fire from the hatch as Marcus hauled Gabriel and the others aboard. The hatch slammed and the transport lifted on howling thrusters, clawing for the sky. Gabriel collapsed into a seat, sucking in ragged breaths. He looked back at the disintegrating compound, now a maelstrom of fire and smoke. As he watched, the central dome imploded, the detonation utterly consuming the terraforming machine's corpse. A miniature sun blossomed, searing his retinas even through the transport's tinted viewports. The shockwave buffeted the skimmer, nearly hurling it into a spin. Gradually, the roaring faded as they left the destruction behind. "We did it," Olivia breathed, slumping back. "We actually did it." Gabriel looked to Boron. The scientist met his gaze, something like grim satisfaction in his eyes. Zortex lay insensate nearby, securely bound. "Your people," the merc said. "This won't stop them, will it? They'll keep coming." "Yes," Boron said wearily. "They will. But this is a start. We've shown them that humans cannot be dismissed, cannot be trifled with, and that there are some among my kind who see the folly of this war." Gabriel nodded slowly. Boron was right. This was a victory, but not an ending. Only the first step on a long, hard road. But it was a road humanity would walk unbowed, and perhaps one day the Denobulans would walk it with them. For now, he let the exhaustion take him, let the whoops and backslaps of his squad wash over him. They'd earned this moment, earned it in blood and fire and sheer indomitable will. But tomorrow the fight would continue. It always did. As the Denobulan compound burned behind them, Gabriel cradled Dr. Boron's battered form, the scientist's breath coming in ragged gasps. Blood soaked his torn uniform, his face a mask of pain. Omega Squad hustled them aboard the waiting transport, engines already spooling up. "Hang on, Doc," Gabriel urged as they lifted off, racing for the nearest Black Star medical facility. "We'll get you patched up. You're going to make it." Boron shuddered, his bulbous eyes struggling to focus. "The invasion!" he wheezed. "You must stop it!" Gabriel squeezed his shoulder. "We will, I promise." Medics swarmed around them as they touched down, rushing Boron into surgery. Time seemed to crawl as Gabriel paced outside the operating room, his team's faces drawn and exhausted. Finally, a doctor emerged, his expression grim. "He's stable for now," the doctor said, "but his injuries are severe. The next 24 hours will be critical." Gabriel's jaw clenched. They couldn't afford to wait. He turned to Olivia. "Start analyzing that data from the compound. We need to know what else the Denobulans are planning." She nodded, already tapping furiously at her datapad. Hours blurred by as they pored over the intel, adrenaline and stims keeping them sharp. Then Olivia bolted upright, her face draining of color. "Gabriel, it's not over. The terraforming machine was just the beginning." She showed him the data, her hands trembling. Gabriel's blood ran cold. A Denobulan invasion fleet already en route to Earth. Over 100 warships armed with advanced weaponry designed specifically to bypass Earth's defenses. They'd be here in days. "Christ," Marcus breathed. "We're screwed." "No," Gabriel snapped. "We're not. We stop them here and now. We don't let them get anywhere near Earth." Jacob frowned. "How? Our ships can't handle a fleet that size." Gabriel's mind raced. A crazy idea took shape, so desperate it just might work. He looked to his team, these men and women who had been through hell with him. "We have one advantage they won't expect," he said slowly. "The Black Blade." Olivia's eyes widened. "The stealth frigate? But it's still a prototype." "Exactly. They'll never see us coming." Gabriel leaned forward. "We intercept them in deep space. Get in close with the cloak. Hit them with everything we've got. Sow chaos, take out key targets. Thin their ranks before they reach Earth." Marcus barked a laugh. "Suicide mission. I'm in." One by one, Omega Squad nodded. They were with him to the end. Gabriel clasped each of their shoulders. "Suit up and be ready. We leave in 30. The black blade knifed through the void, a wraith against the stars. Gabriel stood on the command deck, his gaze fixed on the forward displays. The Denobulan fleet sprawled before them, a swarm of angular shapes bristling with weaponry. Far more ships than they'd anticipated. Fighters buzzed between the behemoths like angry insects. "Cloak is stable," Olivia reported from her station, face washed in amber light. "They can't see us." Gabriel nodded. "Bring weapon systems online. Prep the Firefly drones. We pick our targets and hit them hard." The stealth frigate ghosted closer, tension ratcheting with each passing second. Gabriel targeted the fleet's flanks first, supply ships and pickets, weaknesses to exploit. "Fire," he said coldly. Space lit up as a salvo of missiles streaked from the Black Blade's launch tubes, the ship shuddering with recoil. The projectiles split into a dozen smaller warheads, invisible to sensors, until they detonated. Denobulan hulls vanished in globes of nuclear fire, the fleet's outer perimeter shattering like glass. Alarms wailed as the aliens reeled in confusion, struggling to localize the threat. "Cloak holding," Olivia called. "Damage assessment coming in. 7 enemy ships destroyed, 5 crippled." A fierce grin split Gabriel's face. First blood to them. "Reload tubes and move us to Sector 9. Fire the Fireflies." Swarms of stealthy attack drones spilled from the frigate's launch bays, flitting through the enemy formation like sparks from a forge. They latched onto key systems and detonated, sowing pandemonium. Gabriel watched the destruction unfold, the fleet scrambling to regroup. Their point defenses scythed the void, seeking targets that weren't there. The Black Blade danced between the confusion, a shark among minnows. "Reading multiple generator overloads," Jacob reported. "They're losing power." "Hangar bays on the destroyers are wide open," Olivia added. "The drones took out their atmospheric containment." Gabriel pounced on the opportunity. "Launch boarding teams, let's get in there and gut those ships from the inside." Drop pods speared into the stricken destroyers, disgorging Gabriel and squads of Omega commandos in powered armor. They plunged through the gaping hangars, mag boots clanging on metal decks. Startled Denobulans died before they could even reach for weapons, chopped down by chugging flechette rifles. Bulkheads shattered and compartments vented atmosphere as the humans rampaged through the ships, shooting and sabotaging as they went. In the heart of the destroyer's engine room, Gabriel worked furiously at the control panels, mag clamped to the deck. He'd just finished overloading the reactor when a cold voice stopped him dead. "Gabriel Cox, I knew we would meet again." Gabriel spun to see a hulking figure standing in the shadows, clad in sleek black armor. A figure he recognized all too well. Commander Zax stepped into the light, a cruel smile on his alien features. "You just don't know when to die, do you?" Gabriel snarled, bringing his rifle to bear. Zax laughed, the sound utterly devoid of humor. "I could say the same of you, human." His gauntlets flared with amber light, energy fields humming. "Let us finish this." They crashed together in a whirlwind of punches and kicks, moving with inhuman speed in the microgravity. Gabriel ducked a blow that cratered the bulkhead behind him and hammered his fist into Zax's stomach, the impact absorbed by the alien's armor. Zax's return strike sent him careening across the compartment, his vision flashing red. Alerts shrilled in his helmet as the reactor temperature spiked, approaching critical. He didn't have time for this. Snarling, Gabriel launched himself at Zax, grabbing the alien's arm as he threw a punch. Using Zax's own momentum, Gabriel swung him around and slammed him into the reactor housing. Pipes burst and coolant vented, sparks flaring. Zax roared in fury, his armor shimmering with energy. He lashed out with a kick that caught Gabriel in the chest, sending him tumbling. Gabriel's rifle spun away, lost in the chaos. Zax pounced, hands wrapping around Gabriel's throat. "Now you die, human," the alien hissed, eyes blazing with hatred. Gabriel grabbed Zax's wrists, servos straining. He looked past the alien to the reactor controls, red lights flashing in warning. An idea hit him, a crazy, suicidal idea. "Not today," Gabriel gasped. His helmet slammed forward, cracking against Zax's faceplate. The alien reeled back, momentarily stunned. Gabriel kicked off the deck and surged upward, locking his arms around Zax's torso. He hit the emergency release on his mag boots. Together, they flew across the room in a tangle of limbs, slamming into the reactor housing. The containment field flickered wildly, alarms blaring. Gabriel grabbed a maintenance tether and looped it around Zax's chest, mag clamping it to the housing. "What are you doing?" Zax roared, struggling against the tether. His armor sparked, the impacts damaging its systems. Gabriel kicked off the reactor, sailing towards the exit. "Leaving you to go down with your ship." Zax's howl of rage chased him as he shot through the hatch, sealing it behind him. He opened his comm as he rocketed through the destroyer's disintegrating hull. "All teams evacuate now. The reactor's going critical." The drop pods blasted free from the dying ships, racing back to the Black Blade. Gabriel watched from his pod's viewport as the destroyer imploded, consumed by a miniature sun. The shockwave buffeted the pods, nearly knocking them off course. Slowly, the glare faded, revealing a ragged hole in the Denobulan formation. "Mother of God," someone whispered over the comm. "We got them." Gabriel could only nod, his heart pounding. The Black Blade swooped in, collecting the pods like a giant metal hawk. As Gabriel stumbled from his pod in the hangar bay, his team gathered around him, armor scorched and dented. Olivia pointed to the display, her hand shaking. "The fleet, they're breaking off, jumping to FTL." It was true. The remaining Denobulan ships were fleeing, abandoning their assault on Earth. A ragged cheer went up from the human crew, hugs and backslaps all around. They'd done the impossible. They'd won. But as Gabriel watched the aliens vanish into the void, he couldn't shake the cold certainty that this was far from over. They'd bloodied the Denobulans today, broken their fleet, but they'd be back, and next time, there would be no stopping them. Back on Earth, cheering crowds thronged the streets as news of the Denobulan fleet's defeat spread like wildfire. Gabriel and Omega Squad stepped off their transport to a hero's welcome, flashbulbs popping and reporters shouting questions. They'd done the impossible, striking a devastating blow against the alien invaders. For a moment, Gabriel allowed himself to savor the hard-won victory. But only for a moment. Dr. Baran, his injuries healed but his face still drawn, pulled Gabriel aside as the celebration swirled around them. "We need to talk," he said urgently, "in private." Gabriel frowned but nodded, following the Denobulan scientist to a secure briefing room. The rest of Omega Squad filed in behind them, their faces turning grim as Boron called up a hollow projection of the alien bioweapon. "I've been analyzing the data we recovered," Boron said, enlarging sections of the rotating molecule, "and I've found something disturbing." He highlighted a segment of the weapon's genetic code, the symbols pulsing an angry red. "This sequence here, it's designed to allow the weapon to evolve, to adapt to other species besides humans." A chill ran down Gabriel's spine as he absorbed the implications. Olivia stepped forward, her eyes wide. "My God, if this thing got loose..." "It could threaten the entire galaxy," Boron finished grimly. Gabriel's jaw clenched. After everything they'd sacrificed, the job still wasn't done. "So how do we stop it?" "We have to find the Denobulan's main bioweapons research facility," Boron said. "Destroy all traces of this monstrosity. Every sample, every scrap of data. It's the only way to be sure." Marcus snorted. "Oh, is that all? Just waltz right into the heart of Denobulan space and take out their most heavily guarded installation?" "I know how it sounds," Gabriel said, "but we don't have a choice. If even a single cell of this thing survives..." He let the thought hang in the air, his gaze hardening. "Gear up. We need to move fast. Hit them before they have a chance to..." The briefing room door hissed open, and a tall, whipcord-lean Denobulan strode in. His eyes, a startling violet, met Gabriel's without flinching. "I can get you inside," the newcomer said without preamble. "I know the facility, the security codes, the hidden entrances even Zorax doesn't know about." Gabriel studied him warily. And you are? Zor-Al, the Denobulan said. I was on Zorax's research team, until I learned the truth about his work. His lips twisted in disgust. He's a defector, Boron explained. Came to me seeking asylum. Zor-Al's intel is the real deal. Gabriel considered for a long moment, then nodded. All right. Looks like we've got our ticket in. Zor-Al, you're with me. The rest of you, rig that facility to blow. We'll rendezvous at the evac point once we secure the package. A flurry of salutes and the squad filed out to prep their gear, leaving Gabriel alone with the Denobulan defector. Zor-Al tossed him a data chip. Disguise patterns for Denobulan biolab security, he said. Your suit's camouflage matrix should be able to match it. Gabriel slotted the chip, his armor shimmering and reconfiguring into the gray-green scales of a Denobulan guard uniform. He met Zor-Al's violet gaze. I'm trusting you, he said quietly. Don't make me regret it. The Denobulan research base rose from the jungle like a gleaming tumor, all spiked towers and pulsing sensor arrays. Gabriel crouched in the undergrowth beside Zor-Al. Omega Squad fanned out behind them. Sweat beaded his brow beneath the suffocating Denobulan helmet. Perimeter defenses? He murmured. Zor-Al tapped a code into his wrist computer. Deactivated. We've got a narrow window. Let's move. They ghosted through the force field. Just another pair of Denobulan guards on patrol. Gabriel's skin crawled as they passed the towering walker mechs and power-armored troopers manning the outer checkpoints. If their disguises slipped for even a second. But the soldiers barely spared them a glance, waving them through. They were inside. Zor-Al led them unerringly through the maze of sterile corridors, past hissing decontamination chambers and pulsing biostasis vaults. Gabriel's grip tightened on his rifle as he scanned the eerie green gloom, senses straining for any hint of danger. The main research labs are on sub-level 9, Zor-Al whispered as they descended. Zorax's personal facility. Charming, Gabriel muttered. Let's hope he's not... A piercing alarm shrieked through the corridor, crimson light strobing. Zor-Al cursed viciously. They've detected the intrusion. The rest of your team... We'll handle it, Gabriel snapped, breaking into a run. We keep moving. They burst into the main lab, a cavernous chamber of pulsing biotanks and bubbling gene vats. And standing amid it all, a spindly gray figure in an environment suit. Zorax. The Denobulan scientist's bulbous eyes widened as they fixed on Gabriel. You, he hissed, recognition dawning. The human from the Kuiper Belt. But how? His gaze fell on Zor-Al and his face twisted in fury. Traitor, you led them here. Zor-Al raised his blaster. It's over, Zorax. This ends now. The doctor threw back his head and let out a chittering screech. On cue, a dozen biotanks burst open, disgorging nightmarish shapes. Denobulan super soldiers, their flesh warped and pulsing with unnatural mutations. They lunged for Gabriel and Zor-Al, howling. Gabriel opened fire, plasma bolts stitching the charging abominations. Icor sprayed as the super soldiers absorbed the hits, their wounds sealing shut in seconds. One of them leapt for him, bone scythes protruding from its fists. Gabriel ducked the slashing blades and hammer-punched the creature in its chest. His armored fist sank into the yielding flesh, the creature's exoskeleton cracking beneath the force of the blow. He wrenched his hand free in a welter of fluids as the super soldier staggered back. Beside him, Zor-Al was a blur of motion, his Denobulan martial arts a perfect complement to Gabriel's raw strength. He dropped two super soldiers with precise nerve strikes, his movements fluid and lightning fast. But for every abomination they felled, two more surged forward. Gabriel's HUD flashed warnings as a flensing claw raked across his chest plate, the creature's molecular-edged talons scoring the armored surface. He unloaded a point-blank shot into the thing's skull, pulping it. Fall back, Gabriel roared over the din. We need a choke point. They leapfrogged back, fighting every step, the super soldiers relentless. Finally, they reached the lab's blast doors and dove through. Gabriel hammered the controls and the reinforced portal slammed down, shearing a super soldier in half. The bifurcated creature continued to scrabble forward, trailing ropey intestines. Omega, I need a sit rep, Gabriel barked into his comm as they sprinted down the corridor. What's your status? Olivia's voice crackled back, laced with static and the staccato thunder of gunfire. We've rigged the facility's power core, but we're cut off, pinned down in the hangar bay by a shitload of hostiles. Gabriel cursed. Hold position, we're on our way. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Dr. Zorax stood in the center of a large chamber, his environment suit discarded. His spindly gray body pulsed with unnatural energies, his eyes flaring a soulless white. Fools, he hissed, his voice echoing weirdly. You cannot stop the inevitable. The scourge will be unleashed. He raised a glowing injector device, a bubbling canister of sickly fluid slotted into its housing. The bioweapon. No! Zor-Al shouted, lunging forward. But a shimmering force field snapped into place around Zorax, hurling the Denobulan rebel back. Gabriel hammered the barrier with plasma bolts, but they splashed harmlessly off its surface. Did you really think I wouldn't take precautions? Zorax sneered. After your interference at the Kuiper Belt, this time you will not stop me from... A plasma bolt punched through his chest from behind, vaporizing his heart. Zorax looked down at the smoking hole in shock, then toppled forward. The force field flickered and died. Zor-Al lowered his blaster, breathing hard. Shut up, he muttered. They rushed to the fallen scientist's side. The bioweapon injector lay inches from his limp grasp, still pulsing with malevolent energies. Gabriel reached for it carefully, and Zorax's hand shot out, clamping onto Zor-Al's ankle with a steel grip. The Denobulan rebel cried out as Zorax wrenched him off balance, pulling him down. The scientist's other hand clawed for the injector. Zor-Al! Gabriel shouted, lunging for the device. His fingers closed around the injector a split second before Zorax's did. The two grappled for the bioweapon, rolling across the floor in a desperate struggle. Zorax's unnatural strength was fading, dark blood pumping from his chest wound. But in his madness, he refused to relinquish his death grip on the injector. He gibbered and spat, trying to turn the device's wicked needle towards Gabriel's face. Gabriel headbutted the scientist, feeling cartilage crunch. Zorax's grip loosened, and Gabriel tore the injector free, rolling to his feet. He raised the device to smash it. And Zor-Al screamed. The rebel Denobulan writhed on the floor, Zorax's limp hand still clamped around his ankle. The scientist had jabbed a second injector into Zor-Al's leg, the light in its reservoir flashing an ominous red. Empty. No, Gabriel breathed, cold horror flooding him. Zor-Al met his eyes, agony and resignation mingling on his angular features. Go, he gasped. Leave me. Tears blurred Gabriel's vision as he stared at the nightmarish injector in his hand, then at his stricken ally, the friend who had risked everything to help them, who didn't deserve this fate. But the evac clock was ticking down. The bioweapon pulsed in his grip, its malevolence an almost tangible force. He had to get it out of here, had to destroy it. I'm sorry, Gabriel whispered. And he ran. Alarms shrieked, and emergency bulkheads groaned shut behind him as he pounded through the disintegrating facility. Ahead, a familiar black shape rose from the jungle canopy on howling thrusters. The evac shuttle. Gabriel leapt from the buckling landing platform, his suit's thrusters flaring. For a heart-stopping instant, he hung in space, nothing between him and a 100-foot drop but air. Then armored gauntlets clamped onto his wrists, and Omega Squad was hauling him into the shuttle's bay. He rolled to a stop, gasping, "Punch it!" The hatch slammed shut, and the shuttle clawed for altitude, engines straining. Behind them, the research facility erupted in a cosmic plume of plasma and debris as the rigged power core detonated, the shockwave buffeting the fleeing craft. Gabriel stared out the viewport at the dissipating firefall, his heart a lead weight in his chest. Zor-Al's screams still echoed in his ears. "Gabriel," Olivia said softly, He looked down. The bioweapon injector was still clutched in his white-knuckled grip. He'd held onto it all this time, even as he'd left his friend behind. The injector's reservoir pulsed a baleful red, the color of infected blood, of Zor-Al's sacrifice. Gabriel's armored fingers closed around the vile device, metal creaking. He had to destroy it, had to ensure Zor-Al hadn't died in vain, had to. The injector's needle glinted in the pulsing light. Such a small thing to cause so much destruction, so much death. Slowly, Gabriel raised the device. The needle pressed against the joint of his armor, seeking the flesh beneath. One push, and it would all be over. The weapon would be destroyed, its obscene taint purged from the universe. At the cost of his own life. A small price to pay, really. To protect the galaxy. To honor his fallen friend. His grip tightened on the injector, a final salute to a noble sacrifice. And he pushed. Gabriel lowered the injector, a grim resolve settling over him. No, he couldn't take the easy way out, not while the Denobulans still threatened everything he held dear. With a snarl, he hurled the injector away, the vile device clattering across the deck. "Gabriel?" Olivia asked, concern etched in her features. He met her gaze, jaw set. "We're not done, not by a long shot. Zor-Al's sacrifice won't be in vain." The team nodded, determination hardening their eyes. They had a war to win. Days later, Gabriel found himself on a seedy space station, striding through neon-drenched alleys. Omega Squad fanned out behind him, hands hovering near weapons. They were here to meet the broker, the mysterious figure who claimed to have information that could turn the tide against the Denobulans. Gabriel stepped into a dimly lit bar, the air thick with exotic spices and the babble of a dozen alien tongues. And there, lounging in a shadowed booth, was the broker. Except he wasn't at all what Gabriel expected. The figure rose, his form shimmering with coruscating energies. He was a Luminox, a being of living light. The broker inclined his head, his voice resonating inside Gabriel's mind. "Greetings, Gabriel Cox. I am Zandrax. I have been expecting you." Gabriel slid into the booth, his team arraying themselves around him. He placed the alien artifact on the table, the device thrumming with eldritch power. "You said this was the key to stopping the Denobulans," Gabriel said. "Start talking." Zandrax leaned forward, his luminous eyes fixing on the artifact. "The device you hold is but one component of an ancient Luminox weapon, capable of manipulating matter on the subatomic level. In the wrong hands, it could reshape entire worlds, or destroy them." A chill crawled down Gabriel's spine. "And the Denobulans have the other components?" "They have discovered their location, yes. Even now, they race to assemble the weapon." Zandrax's form pulsed with agitation. "They plan to use it to transform Earth, to make it a paradise for their kind, and in doing so, they will eradicate your species." Gabriel's fists clenched. "How do we stop them?" Zandrax produced a shimmering data chip, sliding it across the table. "The coordinates of their weapons facility, where they are building the device. Infiltrate the base, steal the components before they can be assembled." The Luminox leaned back, his form flickering. "The weapon can be reprogrammed, turned against the Denobulans themselves, target their physiology, unravel them on the molecular level." Gabriel frowned. "And what's in it for you? Why help us?" Zandrax's laughter echoed in his mind. "The Denobulans are not the only ones who covet the weapon's power. If they succeed, they will turn their sights on my people next. And that I cannot allow." Gabriel considered for a long moment, then took the data chip. "I'll need my team, and Dr. Boron." "Of course. I have already arranged transport." Zandrax gestured to the bar's entrance, where a sleek ship had docked. "I wish you luck, Gabriel Cox. The fate of worlds rests on your shoulders." With that, the Luminox faded from view, leaving Gabriel alone with his thoughts and the weight of an impossible mission. They gathered aboard the ship, Gabriel and his team, Dr. Boron and Zor-Al. The Denobulan scientist and rebel pored over the facility schematics, their faces grim. The security will be formidable, Boron said. Automated defenses, gene-locked bulkheads, psionic scanners. Zor-El nodded. But there is a vulnerability. A subsystem we can exploit. Introduce a virus to disable the safeguards. Gabriel leaned over the display. Then that's our ticket in. We go in quiet, infiltrate the base, locate the weapon components. Olivia frowned. How do we get past the bioscans? We'll light up their sensors like a supernova. Dr. Boron smiled thinly. Leave that to me. I can modify your suits, mask your life signs. As far as their scanners are concerned, you'll read as denobulin. Gabriel clapped the scientist on the shoulder. Then let's get to work. We have a war to win. They struck at the heart of the enemy, a surgical strike on the denobulin's most guarded facility. Gabriel and his team moved like ghosts through the corridors, their suits bleeding into the shadows, the virus masking their presence. But what they found within the base chilled them to the bone. It wasn't just a weapons lab. It was a charnel house. Row after row of stasis pods, each containing the twisted form of a denobulin soldier, their bodies warped by a new strain of the bioweapon. My God, Olivia breathed. They're not just building a WMD, they're breeding a new form of super soldier. Gabriel's jaw clenched. Then let's make sure these bastards never see the light of day. They pushed deeper into the facility, the air growing thick with the stench of death and antiseptic. And there, in the central chamber, they found their target, the weapon components, laid out like an altar of damnation. But they weren't alone. A hissing voice cut the air, dripping with malice. Intruders, you dare defile this sacred place? Gabriel spun, carbine snapping up. A hulking figure emerged from the shadows, clad in armor that pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. He carried a cruel-looking halberd, its edge shimmering with molecular disruption fields. Kazarak, Zor-El snarled. The butcher of Xenar Prime. The denobulin super soldier chuckled, a wet, phlegmy sound. Ah, the traitor, I will enjoy flensing the flesh from your bones. He leveled his halberd, the weapon humming with power. Kill them. Shapes emerged from the darkness, a dozen denobulin super soldiers, their bodies twisted by the bioweapon. They charged, howling for blood. Gabriel and his team met them head-on, weapons roaring. The chamber dissolved into a maelstrom of whirling bodies and flashing blades, the air crackling with the discharge of energy weapons. Kazarak bellowed as he barreled towards Gabriel, his halberd scything through the air. Gabriel ducked and rolled, the deadly blade hissing past his helmet. He came up firing, his rounds sparking off Kazarak's armor. The super soldier laughed, the sound dripping with insanity. You cannot win, human. We are the future. The denobulins will scour your kind from the stars. Gabriel gritted his teeth, his suit's HUD flashing warnings as Kazarak's blows hammered his defenses. The super soldier was fast, far faster than anything human, and strong, each strike feeling like the impact of a small truck. He risked a glance at his team, saw them fighting for their lives against the tide of monstrous foes. Zor-El was a dervish, his blades flashing as he dueled 3 of the abominations at once. But even he was being driven back, the enemy's numbers telling. They needed an edge, something to even the odds. Gabriel's gaze fell on the stasis pods lining the walls, the banks of churning mutagenic vats. And he had an idea. A desperate, insane idea. He keyed his comm, shouting over the din of battle, "Fall back! Draw them into the containment chamber!" His team disengaged, leapfrogging back as they laid down covering fire. The denobulin soldiers howled in pursuit, Kazarak at their head like a raging demon. Gabriel reached the chamber door, his armor sparking from a dozen near misses. He slapped the controls, the heavy blast door grinding open. "Come on, you bastards!" he roared. "Come and get us!" Kazarak charged, his warriors baying at his heels. They burst into the chamber and Gabriel slammed his fist on the door control. The portal ground shut with a boom of locking bolts, sealing them in. With the denobulin warriors trapped inside the containment chamber, Gabriel raced to the control panel. One of the mutagenic vats was connected directly to the room, a failsafe in case of a containment breach. "I hope you choke on it, you bastards," Gabriel snarled. He slammed his hand on the release. Inside the chamber, vents opened along the walls and floor. A sickly green mist hissed forth, the bioweapon in its rawest form. Kazarak had a moment to look confused before the mutagen engulfed him, pouring down his throat, seeping into his pores. He screamed, a high, ululating wail of agony. The Denobulan warriors thrashed and convulsed, their bodies twisting horrendously as the bioweapon ravaged them from within. Flesh sloughed off, bones warped and splintered. In moments, they were unrecognizable, pulsing masses of liquescent horror. Gabriel watched grimly through the observation port, his hand hovering over the containment purge control. "Burn in hell," he whispered. He stabbed the button. The chamber filled with searing light as plasma jets ignited, incinerating the horrors within. In seconds it was over. Nothing remained but drifting ash. Gabriel sagged back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His team gathered around him, their faces haggard beneath their helms. "The components," Olivia said hoarsely. "We need to grab them and get the hell out of here." Gabriel nodded wearily. "Agreed, let's move." They raced back to the central chamber, scooping up the alien devices with trembling hands. Alarms began to wail as they stuffed the components into their packs, the base's security finally registering the intrusion. "Time to go!" Gabriel barked. "Move! Move!" They sprinted for the exit, energy bolts sizzling past them as automated defenses opened up. Olivia cried out as a shot clipped her arm, spinning her around. Marcus grabbed her, hauling her onward. They burst from the facility into the harsh light of the alien sun, racing for their waiting ship, but skidding to a halt as a new threat emerged to block their path. A phalanx of gleaming figures marched towards them, the ground shaking beneath their tread. Denobulan battle droids, each one a sleek engine of death, their frames bristling with advanced weaponry. The droids leveled their arms, energy cannons thrumming to life. "Surrender the components," one intoned in a flat, metallic voice, "or be destroyed." Gabriel unslung his rifle, his breath rasping in his helmet. His HUD was a sea of red, armor integrity warnings flashing. The battle with Kazarak had depleted his suit's power to critical levels. He had nothing left. But the weights of the alien components in his pack galvanized him. With those devices, they had a chance to end this war for good. He couldn't let them fall back into Denobulan hands. "Omega," he shouted, "get the components to the ship. I'll hold them off." Marcus shook his head, raising his own rifle. "Like hell you will. We're not leaving you behind." Olivia nodded, her face pale but determined. "We're with you, Gabriel, to the end." Gabriel felt a swell of emotion, looking at these warriors who had become more than comrades. They were family. He would gladly die for them. But he would not let them die for him. "Get to the ship," he ordered roughly. "That's a command. I'll be right behind you." He could see the protest in their eyes, the anguish. But they were soldiers. They knew when an order had to be obeyed. "Give 'em hell, boss," Marcus said thickly. He clasped Gabriel's shoulder, then turned and ran for the ship, the others following. Gabriel faced the advancing droids, a lone figure against a tide of metal. He raised his rifle, the weapon suddenly feeling very small against such odds. But then his eyes fell on the alien components in his pack, the key to a weapon that could unmake worlds or reforge them. A dangerous thought crystallized in his mind, a desperate gambit. He knew the risks, the incalculable danger of tampering with technology beyond human ken. But he was out of options, out of time. He knelt, assembling the components with shaking hands as the droids bore down on him. The devices pulsed and thrummed as they locked together, ancient energies awakening. Gabriel could feel the power radiating from the assembled matrix, an alien force beyond his comprehension. But there was no going back now. He stood, raising the ancient weapon as the droids leveled their cannons. They fired as one, a storm of blinding energy. And Gabriel activated the device, pouring every ounce of his will into the Matrix. Reality buckled, a wave of impossible force radiating out from the human. The droid's blasts warped and twisted in midair, coiling back on themselves like angry serpents. And then, impossibly, they reversed. The reflected energy slammed into the droids, instantly reducing them to molten slag. But the destruction did not stop there. The unmaking field spread, reality unraveling in its wake. The very ground dissolved, stone and metal subliming into nothingness. Gabriel felt the weapon shudder in his hands, the power threatening to break free, to consume everything. With a cry, he wrenched his will upon the Matrix, fighting to control the forces he had unleashed. It was like grappling with a supernova, wrestling a star with his bare hands. Every atom of his being screamed in protest, reality itself rejecting his efforts. But he held on, pouring all of his strength, all of his determination into the Matrix. And slowly, agonizingly, the unraveling field began to contract, pulling back in on itself like a collapsing star. Gabriel felt as if he were being torn apart, his mind and body stretched to the breaking point. But he did not yield. With a final, titanic effort, he wrenched the field into submission, the alien energies dissipating harmlessly into the ether. Gabriel collapsed to his knees, the weapon tumbling from his nerveless fingers. He knelt there amidst the devastation, his armor shattered, his body broken, but alive, victorious. The sound of engines filled his ears, a familiar silhouette descending from the sky. The Black Star ship settled beside him, the ramp lowering to reveal his team. They gathered around him, hands reaching to lift him up, to carry him home. "You did it," Olivia whispered, tears streaking her face. "You crazy son of a bitch! You actually did it!" Gabriel managed a weak smile, his vision darkening at the edges. "Couldn't let you have all the fun," he rasped. Marcus shook his head, wonder and disbelief warring on his features. "That weapon, the power it unleashed, I've never seen anything like it." Gabriel nodded wearily, the last of his strength fleeing. "We have to destroy it," he whispered. "No one should wield that kind of power. Not us, not the Denobulans. It's too dangerous." Olivia's eyes met his, understanding passing between them. "We will," she promised. "We'll make sure it's gone forever." Gabriel let his eyes slip closed, surrendering to the beckoning darkness. "Good," he murmured. "That's good." His team bore him into the ship, carrying him away from the field of his greatest triumph and his darkest fear. The war was not over, Gabriel knew. There would be other battles to fight, other sacrifices to make. But for now he could rest, for he had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had not consumed him. Not yet. Gabriel's eyes darted between the advancing battle droids and the alien weapon components scattered at his feet. He had seconds to act. "Fall back," he barked to his team, dropping to one knee and scooping up the components. "I'll hold them off." Omega Squad laid down a blistering barrage of covering fire as they retreated, energy bolts sizzling past Gabriel's head. His fingers flew over the weapon's interface, his suit's systems integrating with the alien tech. Denobulan glyphs flashed across his HUD, the droid's energy signature laid bare. "Come on, you bastard!" Gabriel growled through gritted teeth. "Work with me here." The weapon hummed to life, ancient circuits pulsing with eldritch power. Gabriel felt it resonate through his armor, an arcane tingling in his fingertips. He rose to his feet, the assembled matrix thrumming in his grip. The droids marched forward, a phalanx of gleaming metal, their blasters leveled. Gabriel sighted down the weapon's crude barrel, targeting reticles dancing in his display. He pulled the trigger. A searing lance of energy erupted from the weapon, a blinding pulse of light and heat. It struck the lead droid dead center, engulfing it in a corona of shattering sparks. For a split second, the machine stood intact, haloed by crackling energies. Then it simply disintegrated, molecularly deconstructed by the blast. The pulse continued on, spearing through the next droid and the next, leaving behind only drifting clouds of metallic ash. Gabriel gaped at the devastation, shock and elation warring within him. But his triumph was short-lived as the facility shuddered around him, the weapon's discharge destabilizing its very foundations. Girders buckled and snapped, ferrocrete cracking like eggshells. "Gabe!" Olivia's voice crackled over the comm. "The whole place is coming down. We need to move." Snapped out of his stupor, Gabriel sprinted for the exit, the alien weapon clutched tight. He leapt over yawning chasms that opened in the floor, ducked under collapsing bulkheads. The droids, those that remained, were crushed beneath tons of falling debris, no more adaptive than the rubble that buried them. Gabriel burst from the facility just as it imploded behind him, a plume of dust and pulverized plasteel chasing his heels. He tumbled to the ground in a clatter of armor, gasping for breath. Omega Squad gathered around him, their faces ashen beneath their helms. But there was no time for relief or congratulations. A new threat loomed above, a flotilla of Denobulan warships descending through the roiling clouds. Gabriel staggered to his feet, raising the alien weapon once more. Power cells depleted, its energy signature flickered erratically in his display. He had one shot, maybe two. He aimed for the lead ship's propulsion drives and fired. The blast sheared through the vessel's shields like they were gossamer, leaving its engines a guttering ruin. The ship listed drunkenly, belching flames and debris. Gabriel swung the weapon to target the next ship, but it clicked empty in his hands. Cursing, he looked to his team. "That's it, we're leaving," he shouted. "Everyone back to the shuttle, double time." They piled into the waiting craft, Olivia leaping into the pilot's chair. The shuttle screamed skyward on straining thrusters, weaving between the listing warships. The aliens, their fleet in disarray, could only watch helplessly as their quarry slipped away. Safely in FTL transit, Gabriel slumped against the bulkhead, the adrenaline draining from him like spilled blood. They had the weapon. They had dealt the Denobulans a mighty blow, but somehow he knew this was far from over. His suspicions were confirmed upon their return to Earth, grim news awaiting them like a hangman's noose. The Denobulans, desperate and spiteful, had launched an all-out assault on the human colony on Mars. A new breed of monstrosity led the charge, biomechanical horrors that combined the worst of flesh and steel. The colony's defenses, outmatched and outnumbered, had crumpled like wet tissue. Already, Denobulan troops were entrenching themselves on the red soil, fortifying their foothold. Gabriel listened to the reports with a sinking heart, a cold certainty settling over him. They had bloodied the Denobulans, but not broken them. The war was far from over. "We have to take back Mars," he said flatly, the words leaden on his tongue. "We can't let them dig in, establish a staging ground for attacking Earth." Grim nods all around. Omega Squad, ever ready, stepped forward as one, but Gabriel waved them back. "No," he said. "I need you here in case the Denobulans try anything else. Mars is on me." He would not risk his team, his family, on this desperate gambit, but he would not go alone. Earth's best and bravest rallied to his call, a picked force of the most lethal soldiers humanity had to offer, and they would all need an edge. Dr. Boren and the Black Star engineers worked feverishly, reverse engineering Gabriel's adaptive suit. In a matter of hours, they had a platoon's worth of the advanced armor, each suit keyed to its wearer's unique biology. Gabriel looked over the assembled force, a grim pride kindling in his heart. They were humanity's sword and shield, their last best hope. And he would lead them unto the very gates of hell if need be. But even as they prepared for the assault on Mars, a new threat reared its head. An urgent transmission from Xandrax, dire warning bubbling from the Luminox's fractal lips. The alien weapon, the matrix of ancient power they had so desperately sought. It held a secret, a failsafe, hidden within its programming, a doomsday device to end all doomsday devices. If triggered, it would release a wave of annihilating energy, a tide of unmaking that would scour all organic life from the solar system. Human, Denobulan, it mattered not. All would perish, reduced to their component atoms. And the key to this apocalypse, The failsafe's activation codes. The Denobulans had them. Locked away in their command citadel on Mars, a sword of Damocles poised above the cradle of humanity. Gabriel paled as the implications sank in. They could not assault the Martian colony, could not risk the codes falling into the wrong hands in the chaos of battle. They had to secure the failsafe, and they had to do it now. He gathered his most trusted comrades, the best of the best. Olivia, ever stalwart. Marcus, indomitable. Dr. Boron, brilliant and driven. And Zor-Al, the Denobulan defector who had sacrificed everything for the sake of peace. Together, they would infiltrate the heart of the enemy stronghold, cut out this cancer before it could metastasize. The fate of worlds rested on their shoulders. But as they made their silent approach, Zor-Al stumbled, his features contorting in pain. The bioweapon, the insidious taint he had absorbed, it was resurfacing, ravaging his body anew. Dr. Boron steadied him, eyes wide with alarm. There was no cure, no reprieve. Zor-Al was living on borrowed time, a ticking clock winding inexorably down. Gabriel laid a hand on the Denobulan's shoulder, meeting his pain-glazed eyes. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. "You've given enough." But Zor-Al shook his head, jaw clenched against the agony. "No," he gritted out. "I started this. With you. I'll see it through. To the end." Gabriel nodded, throat tight. He knew the look in Zor-Al's eyes, the grim resolve of a soldier staring down the barrel of his own mortality. He would not cheapen it with false comfort or empty platitudes. Together they breached the command center, a scalpel strike amidst the chaos of the Martian battle. They carved through the Denobulan defenders, a whirlwind of blades and bullets, until they reached the inner sanctum. And there, waiting for them with a predator's smile, was Velcor, the Denobulan Psi Master, his mind a twisted labyrinth of power and madness. "Welcome," he purred, "to the end of all things." Gabriel and Velcor clashed in a storm of psionic energy, their minds grappling in a battle as fierce as any physical struggle. The Denobulan commander's power was immense, amplified to godlike levels by the Luminox crystal embedded in his armor. Reality warped and twisted around them as they dueled, each seeking to crush the other's will. But even as Gabriel strained against Velcor's onslaught, his suit's scanners zeroed in on the pulsing crystal at the heart of the commander's power. The readings were off the charts, confirming what Gabriel had suspected. The crystal was a Luminox artifact of unimaginable potency. He opened a comlink to his team, his voice strained. "The crystal! It's amplifying his powers! We can't beat him head on!" Zor-Al's voice crackled back, taut with effort, as he joined his own psionic strength to Gabriel's. "What's the play?" "We need to get that crystal away from him," Gabriel gritted out. "Boron, Zor-Al, hit him with everything you've got. Illusions, false signals, anything to keep him off balance. The rest of you, with me. We're going to rip that rock right off his damn chest." Acknowledgements chimed through the link. Gabriel felt Velcor's assault falter as Boron and Zor-Al went to work, assailing the commander's mind with a barrage of phantasmal images and sensor ghosts. The Denobulan reeled, his focus splintering. Gabriel seized the opening. With a thought, he shunted power to his suit's servo motors and launched himself at Velcor, the rest of Omega Squad close on his heels. They slammed into the commander in a whirlwind of superpowered blows, armored fists and feet hammering at the crystal's housing with piledriver force. Velcor roared in fury, lashing out with a telekinetic blast that hurled Gabriel's team back like rag dolls. But Gabriel held on with grim tenacity, one hand locked around the crystal's edge. He strained with all his gene-boosted strength, feeling the housing start to give. With a screech of tortured metal, the crystal tore free. Gabriel went sprawling, the glittering shard clutched in his fist. Velcor staggered back, his psionic aura guttering like a candle in a gale. But the reprieve was short-lived. With a howl of rage, the Denobulan commander lunged for Gabriel, his hands outstretched like claws. Weakened but far from helpless, Velcor seized the human in an iron grip, psionic coils constricting around Gabriel's throat. "Worm," Velcor spat. "You think this changes anything? I will crack open your mind and feast on the ruins." Blackness crept in at the edges of Gabriel's vision as Velcor bore down on him, a telepathic drill bit boring into his psyche. He felt his defenses crumbling, his will bending under the Denobulan's onslaught. A lightning bolt of pure thought sliced through the command center, shattering Velcor's concentration. Zoral stood with arm outstretched, his face a mask of strain as he poured everything he had into the psionic counterattack. "Get off him, you bastard!" The distraction was all Gabriel needed. His hand clenched around the Luminox crystal, ancient instincts surging to the fore. With a wordless cry, he unleashed the full power of the alien artifact, a spear of searing radiance that pierced the heart of Velcor's mind. The Denobulan commander convulsed as if electrocuted, his mental defenses shattering like glass. And in that moment, Gabriel saw the truth. He saw the hidden directive coded into Velcor's very genes, an imperative that had driven the Denobulans to war and madness, a compulsion implanted eons ago by the progenitors, the unknown beings who had seeded the galaxy with life and with strife. With a wrench of will, Gabriel seized control of the directive, the power of the Luminox crystal surging through him. He could feel the ancient coding unspooling, the chains on Velcor's psyche crumbling to dust. "No more," Gabriel snarled. "No more puppets, no more pawns. This ends now." He severed the final thread, and Velcor sagged like a marionette with its strings cut. The Denobulan's warriors, linked to their commander's mind, crumpled like felled trees, their aggression bleeding away. Gabriel hauled himself to his feet, the crystal's power still thrumming in his veins. There was no time to waste. The failsafe, the doomsday protocol that threatened to scour all life from the system. It had to be stopped. He limped to the control panel, his team falling in around him. With shaking hands, he input the deactivation code, a string of alien glyphs that seemed to dance before his eyes. The console chimed, the deadly countdown halting with only seconds to spare. Gasping, Gabriel slumped against the panel. It was over. The colony was safe. Earth was safe. But even as relief washed over him, a new certainty crystallized in his mind. The progenitors, the shadowy architects of this conflict, their manipulations ran deeper than any of them had realized. The battle for Mars was won, but the war for the truth, for the very future of their species, that was just beginning. Gabriel straightened, the Luminox crystal burning cold against his palm. He met the eyes of his team, saw the same realization and resolve etched on their faces. "Omega," he said, his voice ringing with grim purpose. "Prep for dust-off. We're done here." He turned to the view screen, the star-flecked void of space yawning before him. Out there, somewhere, the progenitors waited, and Gabriel would find them, whatever it took. He would have his answers, even if he had to tear them from the very heart of the universe itself. Gabriel's ship hurtled through the void, engines straining as they pushed deeper into uncharted space. The trail of clues left by the enigmatic progenitors had led them here, to the very edge of the galaxy, where no human had ventured before. "Approaching the coordinates now," Olivia reported from the helm, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Scanning for any signs of civilization." The view screen flickered, resolving into an image of a desolate planet, its surface scarred by ancient craters and jagged canyons. But amidst the rugged terrain, a glint of something metallic caught Gabriel's eye. "There," he said, pointing. "Magnify that sector." The image zoomed in, revealing the unmistakable geometry of artificial structures. Towering spires and sprawling complexes, all bearing the distinctive architectural hallmarks of the progenitors. "My God," Dr. Boron breathed. "An intact progenitor city. The potential knowledge contained within—" Gabriel nodded grimly. "And the potential danger. We proceed with caution. Omega, gear up and prepare for landing. We don't know what we're walking into down there." The ship descended through the thin atmosphere, touching down on the outskirts of the alien city. As the ramp lowered, Gabriel and his team stepped out onto the planet's surface, their adaptive suits automatically adjusting to the harsh environment. They advanced into the ruins, weapons at the ready, scanning for any signs of life or activity. But the city seemed long dead, its structures crumbling and overgrown with strange, twisted vegetation. Suddenly, a burst of energy sizzled past Gabriel's head, scorching the stone beside him. He spun, carbine snapping up, as heavily armed figures emerged from the shadows of the ruins. "Ambush!" he barked. "Omega, scatter and take cover." A fierce firefight erupted, energy bolts and hypersonic slugs crisscrossing the ancient plaza. Gabriel and his team dove for cover behind fallen pillars and shattered walls, returning fire with practiced precision. "Gabriel!" Zor-Al shouted over the din. "These weapons! This tactics! These are no mere raiders. Too well equipped, too coordinated." Gabriel gritted his teeth as he popped up to squeeze off a burst at a particularly bold attacker, dropping them with a shot to the faceplate. "Agreed. We're dealing with professionals here. Mercenaries, by the look of it." A deep, mocking laugh echoed across the plaza, momentarily stilling the gunfire. A figure strode forward, clad in an intimidating suit of powered armor, his face obscured by a menacing helmet. "Gabriel Cox," the figure said, his voice distorted by the helmet speakers. "I must admit I'm impressed. You've led me on quite the merry chase." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure chuckled. "You may call me Zax Rector, and what I want is everything you're searching for. The secrets of the progenitors, the power of their technology. With it, I will reshape the very face of the galaxy." Gabriel's grip tightened on his carbine. "Not on my watch." Rector's helmet dipped in a mocking nod. "We shall see." He raised a gauntleted fist, energy crackling along his knuckles. "Kill them, but leave Cox to me." The battle resumed with a vengeance, Rector's mercenaries surging forward with renewed aggression. Gabriel found himself driven back, separated from his team as he grappled with Rector himself. The mercenary leader was a formidable opponent, his armor absorbing Gabriel's shots like they were mere pinpricks. He lashed out with devastating blows, the servos in his suit whining with each strike. Gabriel fell back, seeking better cover, but Rector pressed his advantage. A vicious backhand caught Gabriel across the faceplate, spiderwebbing his visor and sending him crashing through a crumbling wall. He rolled to his feet in a cloud of ancient dust, only to find himself in a labyrinthine tangle of corridors and chambers. The sounds of battle faded as he pushed deeper into the ruins, trying to get his bearings. A flicker of movement caught his eye, and he spun, bringing his carbine to bear. But the chamber was empty, shadows dancing in the pulsing glow of ancient progenitor technology. Then he heard it, a low, guttural growl, echoing from the darkness. Gabriel's blood ran cold as a monstrous figure detached itself from the shadows, all rippling muscle and gleaming claws. The stalker had found its prey. Gabriel emptied his magazine at the advancing monstrosity, but the rounds seemed to have no effect. The stalker lunged, closing the distance with terrifying speed. They crashed together in a tangle of limbs and slashing claws, rolling across the chamber floor. Gabriel managed to kick the creature off, scrambling to his feet. But the stalker was relentless, its movements a blur as it pressed the attack. Gabriel fell back, desperately trying to put some distance between them. He needed a plan, needed to find a weakness to exploit. But the stalker gave him no respite, its claws raking across his armor, seeking the vulnerable flesh beneath. The chase led them deeper into the ruins, through twisting corridors and cavernous chambers filled with ancient machinery. Gabriel's mind raced, seeking any advantage in the environment around him. He ducked into a narrow passage, the stalker's claws scraping against the walls as it tried to follow. Gabriel slapped a breach charge onto the ceiling and dove clear, detonating it remotely. The passage collapsed in a thunder of falling debris, burying the stalker under tons of rubble. Gabriel didn't wait to see if it was truly dead, sprinting deeper into the ruins. He emerged into a vast circular chamber, its walls lined with pulsing conduits and glowing panels. And there, hovering in the center of the room, was an artifact unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a sphere of pure energy, its surface shimmering with an inner light. Streams of data swirled within it, hinting at untold secrets and unimaginable power. Gabriel approached it cautiously, his suit's scanners going haywire as they tried to analyze the artifact's properties. He reached out a hand, fingers brushing against the sphere's surface. And the world went white. Images flooded Gabriel's mind, a staggering rush of knowledge and sensation. He saw the rise of the progenitors, the creation of their empire. He witnessed their mastery over the very fabric of reality, the fundamental laws of the universe bending to their will. But he also saw their fall, the terrible weapons they unleashed in their final war, the cataclysm that shattered their civilization and left their worlds in ruin. And he understood, with a sudden, terrible clarity, the true nature of the artifact. It was a key, a tool of unimaginable power. With it, one could reshape reality itself, bend space and time to their whims. The vision faded, leaving Gabriel gasping, his mind reeling from the revelation. He reached out and took the artifact, feeling its power thrumming through his suit. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. Gabriel spun to see Zax Rector standing at the entrance, his armor battered but still functional. And beside him, held at gunpoint, were the members of Omega Squad. "I must admit, I'm impressed," Rector said, his voice dripping with mock admiration. "You've led me on quite the chase, but it ends here. Hand over the artifact, and I might just let your friends live." Gabriel's grip tightened on the artifact, his mind racing. He couldn't let Rector have this kind of power. The consequences would be unthinkable. But he also couldn't let his team die. Rector's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't test me, Cox. You have 3 seconds. 1. Gabriel closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind. He felt the artifact respond, its power surging through him. 2. His eyes snapped open, blazing with an inner fire. He thrust out a hand, and a wave of distorted space rippled out from him, slamming into Rector and his men. They staggered, disoriented, their weapons flying from their hands. Omega Squad wasted no time, breaking free and turning the tables on their captors. In the chaos, Rector lunged for the artifact, his hand closing around a fragment that had broken free. Gabriel moved to stop him, but a wave of mercenaries surged into the chamber, weapons blazing. "This isn't over, Cox," Rector snarled, staggering back. "I will have that power one way or another." He vanished into the press of bodies, and Gabriel lost sight of him. The battle raged on, but with the artifact's power at his command, the tide quickly turned. When the smoke cleared, Rector and his surviving mercenaries were gone, fleeing back to their ships. Gabriel stood amidst the ruins, the artifact clutched in his hands. "What now?" Olivia asked, her face ashen. Gabriel looked down at the artifact, feeling the weight of its power and the responsibility that came with it. "We head back to Earth," he said grimly, "and we pray that we can unravel the secrets of this thing before Rector or anyone else can." They made their way back to the ship, the artifact secured in a shielded containment unit. As they broke orbit and set a course for home, Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The progenitor's legacy was a dangerous one, and the battle for their secrets had only just begun. Gabriel and his team pored over the enigmatic progenitor artifact, their brows furrowed in concentration as they worked to decipher its arcane secrets. The device pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light, its surface etched with intricate glyphs and patterns that seemed to shift and change before their eyes. Suddenly, an urgent distress call pierced the air, the holoprojector springing to life with a flickering, static-laced image. It was a transmission from Aegis Prime, a remote human colony on the fringes of known space. "This is Aegis Prime," a panicked voice crackled through the speakers. "We are under attack by unknown hostiles. They're swarming over our defenses, tearing through our lines like they're nothing. We need immediate assistance." Gabriel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the fragmented images playing across the screen. He saw hordes of insectoid creatures, their carapaces gleaming in the harsh light of Aegis Prime's twin suns. They moved with a chilling, hive-like precision, their actions seemingly coordinated by a single, overriding intelligence. "Omega Squad, gear up!" Gabriel barked, already reaching for his weapons. "We're heading to Aegis Prime. Double time it, people!" The team raced to their waiting ship, the engines roaring to life as they blasted off into the void. As they hurtled through the stars, Gabriel studied the scant data they had on the attacking aliens, a cold sense of dread settling in his gut. "These things, they're not like the Denobulans," he muttered, his eyes flicking over the holoprojector. "They're something else entirely. A hive mind, capable of adapting on the fly. And their tech, it's got a distinctly progenitor feel to it." Olivia looked up from her console, her face grim. "You're thinking what I'm thinking," she said. "This could be bad, very bad." Gabriel nodded, his jaw clenched. "We've got to put a stop to this here and now, before it spreads." As they approached Aegis Prime, the scale of the invasion became horrifyingly clear. Swarms of the insectoid aliens, their bodies glistening with a sickly sheen, blanketed the colony's surface. Towering organic structures rose from the earth like cancerous growths, pulsing with an eerie bioluminescent light. The colony's defenses were in shambles, its buildings shattered and burning. The human defenders fought with a desperate fury, but they were hopelessly outnumbered and outmatched. They fell back in disarray, their lines crumbling before the relentless onslaught of the swarm. Gabriel and his team hit the ground running, their weapons already blazing. They carved a path through the seething mass of chitin and claws, their adaptive armor shimmering as it deflected the worst of the aliens' attacks. But for every drone they felled, a dozen more surged forward to take its place. The swarm adapted with terrifying speed, their tactics evolving in real time to counter Omega Squad's every move. "This isn't working," Marcus shouted, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. "We're not even making a dent." Gabriel gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He glanced down at the progenitor artifact, still secured in its containment field at his belt. A desperate idea took shape, a gamble that could turn the tide, or unleash an even greater catastrophe. He reached for the artifact, his fingers closing around its thrumming surface. Instantly, his mind was flooded with a rush of alien sensations, a dizzying whirlwind of thoughts and impulses that threatened to overwhelm him. Gritting his teeth, Gabriel pushed through the psychic maelstrom, focusing his will on the swarm's hive mind. He could feel them, a seething ocean of chittering voices and razor-edged instincts, all bound together by an overriding imperative. And at the center of it all, a single dominant presence. The Queen, the heart and soul of the swarm. Gabriel's eyes snapped open, his voice ringing out over the chaos of battle. "The Queen!" he shouted. "She's the key! We take her out! We break the swarm's cohesion!" Omega Squad rallied around him, their faces grim with determination. Together, they fought their way deeper into the heart of the swarm's hive, the artifact guiding them like a psychic lodestone. They battled through hordes of drones and towering, monstrous warriors, the air thick with the stench of ichor and burnt chitin. Every step was bought with blood and sweat, every inch of ground paid for in pain. At last, they reached the Queen's chamber, a vast, pulsating cavern that thrummed with a sickening bioelectric energy. And there, at its center, stood the Queen herself, a towering, grotesque monstrosity, her form a nightmarish fusion of insectoid horror and progenitor technology. Gabriel charged forward, the artifact blazing in his grip. The Queen reared up to meet him, her mandibles clashing like swords of bone. They crashed together in a titanic struggle, Gabriel's armor groaning under the strain as he grappled with the monstrous alien. With a roar of effort, Gabriel brought the artifact to bear, its surface flaring with a searing psychic light. The Queen convulsed as the artifact's power tore through her mind, disrupting her control over the swarm. All around them, the drones staggered and reeled, their cohesion shattered. They milled about in confusion, their purpose lost, their hive mind fractured. Seizing the moment, the human defenders rallied, pouring fire into the disoriented aliens. The tide turned in a heartbeat, the swarm's advance faltering, then crumbling entirely. Gabriel staggered back from the Queen's twitching corpse, his armor battered and scorched. As he caught his breath, his eyes fell on a glint of metal embedded in the Queen's exoskeleton, a jagged shard of progenitor technology, pulsing with the same eerie light as the artifact in his hand. A chill ran down Gabriel's spine as the pieces fell into place. The swarm's sudden emergence, their terrifying capabilities, the progenitor tech infusing their very biology. It was no coincidence. Someone or something was seeding the galaxy with these artifacts, these echoes of the progenitor's unfathomable power. And Gabriel had a sinking feeling that Zax Rector and his mysterious benefactors were just the tip of the iceberg. He looked to his team, his expression grim. "This is bigger than we thought," he said, his voice heavy with foreboding. "The progenitors, their technology, it's out there, waiting to be found. And if it falls into the wrong hands—" He trailed off, the implications hanging in the air like a pall. Omega Squad exchanged glances, their faces etched with a newfound resolve. They knew what they had to do, the progenitor's secrets, the truth behind their ancient power. They had to uncover it before it was too late, before the galaxy itself was consumed by the legacy of the long-vanished race. It was a daunting task, a mission that would take them to the very edges of known space and beyond. But they were Omega Squad. They were humanity's best and brightest, the last line of defense against the darkness. And they would not fail. Gabriel turned to face the shattered remains of the swarm's hive, his eyes hard and determined. "Omega Squad," he said, his voice ringing with a grim resolve. "We've got work to do." Acting on a cryptic lead provided by the enigmatic Dr. Boron, Gabriel and Omega Squad set course for a remote, long-abandoned progenitor research station hidden deep within the treacherous heart of an unmapped asteroid field. Deftly piloting their stealth shuttle through the swirling maelstrom of jagged space rocks, the team couldn't shake the ominous feeling that they were heading into a trap. Their fears were realized the moment they breached the station's airlock. A hail of plasma fire tore through the confined space, forcing the team to dive for cover behind twisted support struts. Gabriel snapped off a volley of return fire, his enhanced optics picking out the ghostly heat signatures of their attackers. "It's a damn ambush," he snarled into the comm. "Denobulan extremists, heavily armed." "And led by yours truly," a chillingly familiar voice crackled over the link. "Did you really think you'd seen the last of me, Gabriel?" Ice flooded Gabriel's veins as Commander Zax himself stepped from the shadows, an ornate energy blade crackling in his fist. The Denobulan's face was a mask of cruel triumph. "Surprised to see me? You shouldn't be. I've been busy uncovering the secrets of the progenitors, secrets that will finally seal humanity's doom." Zax twirled his blade in a mocking salute. "This station? Merely the first breadcrumb on the trail. And you, my foolish friends, have followed it right into my web." With a roar, the Denobulan commander hurled himself at Gabriel, his blade slashing down in a humming arc. Gabriel caught the blow on his armored gauntlet, servos whining in protest. He shoved Zax back and countered with a scything kick, but the commander slipped aside with preternatural speed. All around them, Omega Squad was locked in desperate battle with the Denobulan extremists, the cramped confines of the station ringing with the bark of gunfire and the sizzle of energy weapons. Gabriel caught glimpses of his team fighting tooth and nail, Olivia grappling with a hulking brute, Marcus pinned down by a withering barrage, Zoral dueling a whirling dervish of blades. But he could spare no thought for his comrades, not with Zax pressing him back in a relentless onslaught. The Denobulan's blade was a blur, hissing and sparking as it clashed against Gabriel's armor. The Merc gave ground step by step, the station's walls blurring past as they dueled through the winding corridors. "You fight well for an ape," Zax taunted, his blade locking with Gabriel's in a shower of sparks. "But you are outmatched. I have gleaned the wisdom of the progenitors, Gabriel. I know secrets that would shatter your primitive mind." Gabriel gritted his teeth, muscles straining as he forced Zax's blade back. "You talk too much," he grunted. "I'll let my blade speak for me then." Zax disengaged suddenly, whirling low. His blade slashed across Gabriel's thigh, parting armor like butter. Gabriel stumbled back with a hiss of pain, feeling hot blood seep into his undersuit. Zax pressed his advantage, hammering Gabriel with a flurry of blows. The merc backpedaled frantically, his wounded leg screaming. He ducked a decapitating slash and lashed out with a desperate jab, his armored knuckles cracking against Zax's jaw. The Denobulan reeled, spitting blood. Gabriel lunged inside his guard, grabbing for the energy blade. They grappled furiously, smashing against bulkheads, the blade crackling between them. With a roar of effort, Gabriel wrenched Zax's wrist, the blade's hilt slipping from the Denobulan's grasp. Zax kneed him viciously in the gut, doubling him over. The Denobulan snatched up his fallen blade and raised it high, triumph blazing in his eyes. "And so it ends," he crowed. "With your death, the path to the Progenitor Vault will be clear. Its secrets will be mine, and with them, the power to crush your pathetic species beneath my heel." Gabriel surged upward, locking Zax's arm in an iron grip. "Not today," he snarled. He torqued savagely, bones snapping. Zax howled. The blade tumbled from his nerveless fingers. Gabriel caught it in a reverse grip and buried it to the hilt in Zax's chest. The Denobulan convulsed, shock and disbelief etched on his features. "How?" he gurgled, black blood bubbling over his lips. "Humans don't break so easy," Gabriel whispered. He twisted the blade viciously. Zax shuddered and went limp, the light fading from his eyes. Gabriel sagged back against the wall, gasping. The battle still raged around him, but the tide had turned. Deprived of their leader, the remaining extremists were falling back in disarray, Omega Squad harrying them mercilessly. But even as relief washed over him, Gabriel felt a chill of dread. Zax's dying words echoed in his mind. The Progenitor Vault, if its secrets fell into the wrong hands. He keyed his comm with an urgent hiss. "Omega, we've got a problem. Zax transmitted the vault coordinates to Rector before I could stop him. We need to move now, before that merc bastard loots the place dry." Weary acknowledgments crackled over the link. Omega had triumphed here, but the true battle was just beginning. Gabriel limped toward the waiting shuttle, his mind racing. They had to beat Rector to the vault, had to secure the Progenitor's deadly legacy before it could be unleashed upon the galaxy. No matter the cost. The vault was a seething chaos of strobing energy fire and thunderous detonations when Gabriel and Omega Squad stormed its towering gates. Zax Rector and his mercenaries were already inside, battling the vault's automated defenses, a legion of ancient war drones left behind by the Progenitors to guard their most prized secrets. The machines fought with an eerie, single-minded ferocity, hurling themselves at the mercenaries in waves of clanking metal and sizzling particle beams. "We can let them thin each other out," Marcus hollered over the din, ducking a searing bolt from a mercenary's rifle. But Gabriel shook his head grimly. "No time. Rector's too close to the inner sanctum. We have to punch through." He hefted his rifle and plunged into the fray, Omega Squad close on his heels. They carved a path of destruction through the embattled mercenaries, their weapons spitting fire, cutting down foes left and right. The vault's guardians, registering the new threat, swiveled to face them, energy cannons thrumming. "Omega, get down!" Gabriel roared. He triggered an EMP grenade and hurled it into the machine's midst. The electromagnetic pulse erupted in a blinding flash, shorting out the drone's circuits and dropping them in smoking heaps. The team leapt over the sparking wreckage and charged deeper into the vault, following the trail of destruction left by Rector and his men. The mercenary leader, it seemed, cared little for his followers' lives, leaving them to be cut down by the vault's defenses as he forged ahead. As they raced through vaulted chambers and echoing halls filled with the detritus of long-vanished alien gods, Gabriel couldn't shake the growing sense of unease, the feeling that they were trespassing in a place not meant for mortal minds. The very air seemed to hum with an unseen power, ancient and vast beyond reckoning. And then, at last, they reached the vault's heart, a soaring chamber that pulsed with a strange, otherworldly light. And there, standing before a shimmering pedestal, was Zax Rector, a look of unbridled greed on his craggy features. The mercenary leader whirled to face them as they burst into the chamber, his rifle leveled. "Ah, Gabriel," he purred. "Ever the thorn in my side? You're too late, you know. The Codex is mine." He gestured to the pedestal, where a small, intricately carved device rested, its surface etched with swirling alien glyphs. The Progenitor Codex, repository of an extinct race's unfathomable knowledge. Rector's finger tightened on his rifle's trigger. "I'll be taking my prize now," he sneered. "And as for you, well, I'm afraid your journey ends here." Gabriel lunged, a wordless cry on his lips. He crashed into Rector in a tangle of straining limbs, grappling for the rifle. The weapon barked, rounds pinging off the chamber's walls. They rolled across the floor in a brutal tussle, fists and elbows flying. Rector lashed out with a boot, catching Gabriel in the stomach and sending him tumbling. The mercenary scrambled to his feet, snatching up his rifle and bringing it to bear. But Gabriel was faster. His own rifle, unslung in a flash, roared in his hands. The armor-piercing rounds punched through Rector's breastplate, stitching a line of bloody craters across his chest. The mercenary leader staggered back, eyes wide with shock. Gabriel advanced step by step, still firing. Rector's body jerked and spasmed under the onslaught, his rifle clattering from his hands. He crumpled to the floor, blood pooling around him. Silence fell, broken only by the fading echoes of gunfire and the ragged breathing of Omega Squad. Gabriel lowered his smoking rifle, exhaling shakily. He approached the pedestal, the Codex glinting in the ethereal light. Such a small thing to hold the power to reshape worlds or destroy them. Gabriel reached out, his fingers hovering over the artifact's surface. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, the enormity of the decision before him. The Codex was a weapon, a tool of unimaginable potential. In the right hands, it could be used for good, to uplift and enlighten. But in the wrong hands, it could bring only ruin and despair. And who could say which hands were truly right? Gabriel hesitated, torn by indecision. And in that moment of doubt, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice he had hoped never to hear again. "Well done, Gabriel," it said, rich with mocking amusement. "You've led me right to the prize." Gabriel's hand clamped around the Progenitor Codex, his fingers interlacing with Rector's as they wrestled for control of the artifact. The mercenary leader snarled, his face inches from Gabriel's, his breath hot and rank. "Let go, you fool!" Rector spat. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Gabriel gritted his teeth, his muscles straining as he tried to wrench the Codex from Rector's grip. "I know enough to stop you," he growled. Suddenly, the Codex began to vibrate in their hands, its surface growing warm to the touch. A high-pitched whine filled the air, building in intensity until it was almost unbearable. Gabriel and Rector stared at the artifact in growing alarm, their struggle momentarily forgotten. The Codex burst into brilliant, pulsating light, bathing the chamber in an eerie glow. Tendrils of energy snaked out from the artifact, wrapping around Gabriel and Rector's arms, their chests, their heads. The two men screamed as the light engulfed them, their bodies dissolving into shimmering motes of energy. And then, with a final, blinding flash, they vanished. Gabriel blinked, disoriented, his head spinning. He found himself standing in a vast, alien landscape, a crystalline expanse stretching out in all directions. Towering spires of glittering stone rose into a sky of swirling, iridescent colors. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. "What the hell?" Gabriel muttered, turning in a slow circle. There was no sign of Rector, no sign of the Vault or Omega Squad. He was alone in this strange, impossible place. A sudden realization hit him like a thunderbolt. The Codex. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a portal, a gateway to another realm, a pocket dimension, created by the progenitors to house their most dangerous secrets. And he was trapped inside it. Gabriel's hand went to his rifle, the weight of the weapon reassuring in his grip. He had no idea what dangers lurked in this alien realm, but he was damn well going to be ready for them. He set off across the crystalline plain, his boots crunching on the glassy surface. His suit's sensors scanned the environment, trying to make sense of the bizarre readings they were picking up. Gravity, temperature, even the composition of the air. Everything was different here, alien and unfamiliar. As he walked, Gabriel's thoughts raced. What secrets did this place hold? What trials awaited him? And most importantly, how was he going to get back to his own reality? He had a feeling he was about to find out. Back in the vault, Omega Squad and the Progenitor Guardians fought on, locked in a desperate battle against Rector's mercenaries. Plasma bolts and hypervelocity slugs crisscrossed the chamber, blasting chunks from the ancient walls and sending showers of sparks cascading from damaged machinery. Zor-El ducked behind a shattered console, his psionic senses reaching out, trying to locate Gabriel's presence. He could feel his friend's essence, distant and distorted, but unmistakably alive. "He's in the Codex!" Zor-El shouted over the din of battle. "We have to find a way to bring him back." Dr. Boron nodded grimly, his fingers flying over a salvaged progenitor datapad. "I'm working on it," he said. "But without knowing the exact nature of the artifact, it could take time we don't have." Zor-El gritted his teeth, a psionic blast hurling a mercenary across the room. They had to hurry. Gabriel was counting on them. Inside the Codex, Gabriel pressed on, navigating the alien landscape with cautious determination. Strange creatures flitted at the edges of his vision, shimmering ethereal things that seemed to phase in and out of reality. He kept his rifle at the ready, prepared for anything. Suddenly, a chilling roar split the air, echoing across the crystalline plain. Gabriel spun, his eyes widening as a monstrous form lumbered into view. It was a beast out of nightmare, all writhing tentacles and gnashing razor-filled maws. An alien horror conjured from the darkest depths of the progenitor's imagination. Gabriel raised his rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger. The creature lunged, its tentacles lashing out like whips. Gabriel opened fire, the muzzle flash strobing in the alien twilight. The battle was on. As Gabriel fought for his life against the progenitor monstrosity, his mind raced with questions. What was this creature? Why had the progenitors created it? Was it a guardian, placed here to protect the Codex's secrets, or something else entirely? He dodged a slashing tentacle, his armor sparking as it glanced off his shoulder. The creature was fast, faster than anything that size had a right to be. Gabriel fired again, the shot stitching a line of oozing craters across the beast's hide. It roared in pain and fury, redoubling its assault. Gabriel backpedaled, his suit's servo motors whining with the effort. He needed a plan, and fast. Brute force alone wasn't going to win this fight. His gaze fell on a towering crystalline spire, its faceted surface glinting in the alien light. An idea formed, desperate and audacious. Gabriel sprinted for the spire, the creature hot on his heels. At the last second, he leapt, his suit's thrusters flaring. He slammed into the spire's surface, his fingers scrabbling for purchase. The creature lunged, its tentacles coiling around the base of the spire. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "Chew on this, ugly," he muttered. He fired his rifle point-blank into the spire's base, the shots cracking the crystalline structure. The spire buckled, then toppled, crashing down on the creature with a thunderous boom. The beast thrashed and writhed, its tentacles pinned beneath tons of shattered crystal. Gabriel landed hard, rolling to his feet. He approached the trapped creature cautiously, his rifle trained on its twitching form. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns etched into its hide, the pulsing bioluminescence beneath its skin. A sudden, unsettling realization hit him. This creature, as monstrous as it was a product of the progenitors, a creation of the very beings who had seeded the galaxy with life. What did that say about them, about their true nature? Gabriel shook his head, pushing the thought aside. He couldn't afford distractions, not here, not now. He had to stay focused on surviving, on finding a way back to his own reality. He turned away from the trapped beast, his gaze sweeping the alien landscape. In the distance, he caught a glimmer of something, a shimmering, pulsating light, different from the ambient glow of the Codex. A beacon, perhaps? A clue to unlocking the secrets of this place? Gabriel set off towards the light, his steps purposeful, his mind racing with possibilities. Whatever trials lay ahead, whatever challenges the Codex threw at him, he would face them head-on. He was Gabriel Cox, the indomitable hero, and he would not be broken. Gabriel approached the shimmering light, his senses on high alert. As he drew closer, he realized it was emanating from a strange, pulsating construct, a swirling vortex of energy held in place by intricate alien mechanisms. A puzzle, he realized, a test of some kind. He circled the construct warily, his suit's scanners probing its arcane energies. The readings were off the charts, like nothing he'd ever seen. This was progenitor technology at its most advanced, its most esoteric. Tentatively, Gabriel reached out, his armored fingers brushing the edge of the vortex. Instantly, his mind was flooded with a rush of images, of sensations, a dizzying deluge of data pouring directly into his brain. He saw flashes of alien worlds, of towering cities and vast, star-spanning empires. He saw the progenitors themselves, a myriad of diverse species, united in their pursuit of knowledge, of understanding. And he saw their creations, the myriad races they had seeded throughout the galaxy. Humans, denobulans, countless others, all shaped by the progenitor's guiding hand, all part of some vast, inscrutable plan. But there was more. Gabriel saw schisms forming among the progenitors, ideological rifts tearing at the fabric of their unity. He saw a faction arise, one that believed in a more direct, interventionist approach, in using their advanced technology to shape the galaxy species according to their own designs. It was this faction, he realized with a start, that was responsible for the Denobulan Directive, for the insidious programming that had driven them to such heights of aggression and conquest. They were pawns in a game they didn't even know they were playing, puppets dancing to the tune of their hidden masters. And the artifacts, the fragments of progenitor technology scattered across the stars, they were the tools of this manipulation, the means by which the interventionist faction exerted their influence. Gabriel reeled back from the vortex, his head spinning with the weight of the revelation. The true nature of the progenitors, the secrets they had hidden. It was almost too much to process. But one thing was clear. The interventionist faction, whoever or whatever they were the true enemy. The ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, the ones responsible for so much of the chaos and conflict that had plagued the galaxy. And they had to be stopped. Gabriel turned away from the vortex, his jaw set with determination. He had the knowledge he needed, the truth he had sought for so long. Now, he just had to find a way out of this place, a way back to the real world. Back to the fight. As if in response to his thoughts, a shimmering portal flickered into existence before him, a gateway back to the vault, back to his own reality. Gabriel hesitated for only a moment, then stepped through, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He emerged into chaos, into the sound and fury of battle. Omega Squad and the Progenitor Guardians were still locked in combat with Rector's mercenaries, the chamber ringing with the clash of weapons and the crackle of energy blasts. And there, in the midst of it all, was Rector himself. The mercenary leader looked battered and bruised, his armor scorched and dented, but he was very much alive. And in his hand, he held a pulsing, glowing fragment of the Codex. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. Rector must have found his own way out of the pocket dimension, his own path through the trials within. And now, armed with a piece of the progenitor's power, he was more dangerous than ever. The two men locked gazes across the chamber, a silent understanding passing between them. This was it, the final reckoning. The battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Gabriel raised his rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger. Rector mirrored the motion, the codex fragment pulsing in his grip. And then, as one, they charged, hurtling towards each other like two unstoppable forces, ready to collide in a cataclysm of fire and fury. The fate of worlds hung in the balance. Gabriel and Rector crashed together in a whirlwind of blows, their armor sparking and shattering under the relentless onslaught. The mercenary leader fought with a savage ferocity, the codex fragment in his hand pulsing with eldritch energies that lent unnatural strength to his blows. But Gabriel was a force to be reckoned with, his own resolve tempered by the trials he had endured, the truths he had uncovered. He met Rector's attacks head-on, his rifle bucking in his hands, his armor absorbing the worst of the punishment. Around them, the battle raged on, Omega Squad and the Progenitor Guardians slowly, inexorably, turning the tide against the mercenaries. But Gabriel had no attention to spare for the wider fight, his entire being focused on the duel at hand. He and Rector traded blows with lightning speed, their movements a blur of motion and counter-motion. Gabriel ducked a scything slash of the codex fragment, feeling the heat of its passage against his faceplate. He retaliated with a thunderous kick, his armored boots slamming into Rector's chestplate with enough force to crack ceramic. The mercenary staggered back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But there was no respite, no quarter given. He lunged forward again, the codex fragment flaring with searing light. Gabriel met the charge head-on, his rifle forgotten, his hands seizing Rector's wrists in an unbreakable grip. They grappled in intimate proximity, their helmets almost touching, their breath mingling in harsh, desperate pants. "You can't win, Cox," Rector snarled, his voice distorted by his helmet's speakers. "The power of the progenitors is mine. I will reshape this galaxy in my own image." Gabriel gritted his teeth, his muscles straining as he fought to keep the codex fragment at bay. "Not on my watch," he growled. With a final titanic effort, he wrenched Rector's arm to the side, the codex fragment slipping from the mercenary's grasp. It clattered to the floor, its glow dimming, its power fading. Rector howled in fury, his fist slamming into Gabriel's faceplate with shattering force. Gabriel reeled back, his vision swimming, his head ringing. But he didn't fall. With a roar of defiance, he surged forward, his own fist connecting with Rector's helmet, in a blow that echoed like a thunderclap. The mercenary crumpled, his armor shattering, his body going limp. Gabriel stood over his fallen foe, his chest heaving, his armor battered and broken. Around him, the last of the mercenaries fell, Omega Squad and the Progenitor Guardians emerging victorious. But the true battle, he knew, was just beginning. The interventionist faction, the hidden manipulators behind the scenes, they were still out there, still plotting and scheming. And he would find them. He would uncover their secrets, expose their machinations. He would bring them to justice, no matter the cost. For he was Gabriel Cox, the indomitable hero, and he would not rest until the galaxy was safe, until the legacy of the progenitors was secure. No matter how long it took, no matter how far he had to go, he would see this through to the end. To the very end. In the heart of the Codex, Gabriel and Rector clashed in a vicious melee, armored fists and booted feet hammering in a brutal staccato. Gabriel ducked a haymaker and rammed his knee into Rector's gut, servos in his exosuit whining with the impact. The mercenary folded, grunting, but lashed out with a lightning-quick jab that cracked Gabriel's helmet and snapped his head back. They traded blows back and forth across the shifting landscape of the Codex, its crystalline surfaces morphing and flowing like water, responding to the ebb and flow of their battle. One moment, they grappled on a narrow beam over a yawning abyss. The next, they were crashing through a forest of luminous pillars. Gabriel leapt and spun, his heel scything towards Rector's temple. The mercenary barely blocked in time, his forearm taking the brunt of the blow. Armor plates cracked. Gabriel pressed his advantage with a flurry of precise strikes, seeking weak points, pressure points. Rector gave ground, his breath coming hard and fast. He parried frantically, looking for an opening. Gabriel feinted left and then launched himself right, locking his arm around Rector's throat in a crushing chokehold. They crashed to the flickering ground, Gabriel's weight bearing Rector down. The mercenary thrashed and bucked, but Gabriel held on with grim resolve, squeezing. Rector's struggles grew weaker. His eyes bulged behind his shattered faceplate. Gabriel raised his fist for the final, crushing blow, and the codex pulsed with searing light. A figure coalesced before them, towering and radiant. It was vaguely humanoid, but its features were too perfect, too symmetrical to be human. It was a progenitor, an architect of the galaxy. "Enough," it said, its voice resonating in their bones. "You have passed the test." The progenitor explained that the codex was more than just a repository of knowledge. It was a crucible designed to evaluate the species the progenitors had seeded across the stars. The conflict between Gabriel and Rector was a reflection of the fundamental schism that ran through the galaxy, the eternal struggle between those who sought dominion and those who fought for liberty. "Now, Gabriel Cox," the progenitor said, "you must choose. Will you seize the power of the Codex for yourself and bend the galaxy to your will, or will you reject this power and trust in the strength and free will of your people?" Gabriel looked down at Rector, prone and beaten. He looked at his own hands, knuckles split and bleeding, and in that moment, he understood. "I choose freedom," he said, rising to his feet. "The galaxy's fate belongs to its people, not to me, not to anyone." The progenitor smiled, a strangely human expression on its alien features. "Well chosen," it said. "Though the road ahead will be hard, you have shown that humanity has the wisdom and fortitude to walk it." It extended its hand, and in its palm was a small, glittering shard. "A parting gift," it said. "May it light your way in the darkness to come." Gabriel took the shard, feeling it thrum with an inner warmth. The progenitor faded, and with it, the dreamscape of the Codex. Reality rushed back in a dizzying blur. Gabriel found himself back in the vault, the battle against Rector's forces already won. Omega Squad gathered around him, their faces tight with worry and relief. "What happened?" Olivia asked. "You just vanished and then—" Gabriel opened his hand, showing them the shard. "I was tested," he said. "We all were, and we passed." A sharp ping from their comms cut off any further discussion. It was a priority transmission from Earth, the highest urgency. Gabriel activated it with a sense of creeping dread. "This is General Aria Vance," a strained voice crackled over the link. "The Denobulans have launched a full-scale invasion. Their ships just appeared out of nowhere, and they're tearing through our defenses like tissue paper. They're using weapons we've never seen before, some kind of advanced progenitor tech." Gabriel's blood ran cold. After all they'd been through, all they'd sacrificed, was this how it would end? "We need you back here, Gabriel," Vance said, her voice heavy with desperation and fear. "We need Omega Squad. You're our last hope." The transmission cut out. Gabriel looked at his team, saw his own grim resolve mirrored in their eyes. They had sworn an oath, all of them, to defend humanity against any threat, and they would honor that oath, even unto death. "Omega Squad," Gabriel said, his voice ringing with cold certainty. "Move out. We have a war to win." A blinding flash of energy engulfed Gabriel and Rector as the crystalline shard suddenly merged with Gabriel's suit. Raw, unimaginable power surged through Gabriel's veins, the full knowledge and might of the progenitors infusing every fiber of his being. His armor glowed with an ethereal luminescence, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Rector's eyes widened in shock and fear as Gabriel rose before him, an avenging angel wreathed in ancient light. With a single decisive blow, Gabriel ended their battle, his fist slamming into Rector's chest with the force of a supernova. Ribs shattered, organs ruptured. Rector flew across the room, smashing into the bulkhead with a sickening crunch. At that moment, Omega Squad completed the upload of the override code. But a heartbeat later, a massive explosion rocked the Denobulan flagship, throwing them all to the deck. Warning klaxons blared. The ship shuddered and groaned, its superstructure straining under the force of the blast. "What the hell was that?" Marcus shouted, struggling to his feet. Olivia checked her scanners, her face paling. Self-destruct sequence. The upload must have triggered a failsafe. This whole place is going to blow. Gabriel's mind raced, processing 1,000 possibilities in the blink of an eye. With his newfound progenitor-enhanced senses, he could see the energy buildups cascading through the ship's power core, the chain reaction already past the point of no return. The explosion would be cataclysmic, destroying not only the flagship, but also a huge swath of the surrounding fleet, human and denobulan alike. Thousands would die. He couldn't let that happen. Gabriel reached out with his mind, his will shaping the fundamental forces of the universe. An immense force field blossomed around the flagship, a shimmering bubble of pure energy containing the blast. The strain was immense, beyond anything Gabriel had ever experienced. His suit, for all its newfound power, began to buckle under the stress, the feedback searing his nerves, setting his blood alight. But he held on, pouring everything he had into the shield. He could feel the lives hanging in the balance, the countless souls he held in his hands. He would not let them down. The flagship vanished in a blinding conflagration, the explosion consuming itself within Gabriel's force field. The feedback surged through him, burning, scouring, remaking. His armor fused to his skin, the boundaries between man and machine blurring into nothingness. Agony beyond imagining ripped through him, and he screamed, a primal, wordless howl. And then it was over. The explosion died, the force field dissipating into nothingness. Gabriel collapsed to the deck, smoke rising from his ravaged body. Omega Squad rushed to his side, their faces tight with worry. Hold on, Gabriel, Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. We'll get you out of here, just hold on. But even as they spoke, Gabriel could feel the change rippling through the denobulan fleet. The override code was spreading, purging the directive from their minds. The invading force faltered, their aggression and hostility draining away. Weapons powered down, shields disengaged. The war was over, but the cost had been high. Worlds lay shattered, millions were dead, and Gabriel... He rose to his feet, his movements smooth and effortless despite his grievous wounds. He could feel the power of the progenitors coursing through him, sustaining him, remaking him. He was something more than human now, a fusion of flesh and ancient technology, a living embodiment of the progenitor's legacy. He looked out across the battlefield, taking in the devastation, the scars left by the conflict. He knew, with a sudden crystalline certainty, that his journey was far from over. The power within him, the knowledge of the ancients, it was his burden to bear now, his mission to fulfill. He had to guide the galaxy towards a better future, to break the cycle of war and destruction that had held sway for so long. It would be a long and difficult road, one he would have to walk alone, for he was no longer truly human, no longer one of them. He was something else, something more. With a heavy heart, he turned to Omega Squad, his friends, his comrades in arms. They looked at him with a mix of awe and trepidation, sensing the change in him, the otherness. I have to go, Gabriel said, his voice echoing with an inhuman resonance. I can't stay. Not anymore. Gabriel, Olivia started, reaching for him, but he stepped back, shaking his head. No, this is my path now, my burden. I have to see it through. He looked at each of them in turn, etching their faces into his memory. Marcus, stoic and unwavering. Zoral, fierce and loyal. And Olivia. Thank you, Gabriel said, putting a lifetime of gratitude, of friendship, of love into those two simple words. For everything. And then he turned and walked away into the depths of the ruined flagship, into the unknown. A solitary figure, forever set apart, bearing the weight of an ancient legacy. Determined to fulfill his purpose no matter the cost.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, I liked the story, and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.